The following video contains content some viewers might find disturbing. The views and opinions expressed here are not facts and are nothing more than entertainment. The views and opinions are not facts and do not represent the views and opinions of Xirtus or our channel, and do not necessarily represent or reflect the views of the guests, YouTube, Google, mainstream media, society, or civilization at large, or anybody. Viewer discretion is advised.
Wednesday Ultra. What's up, guys? How you doing?
What's up?
So Mark's here with us. Seth's here with us. There could be more people. I think Doug's coming, but he's having dinner with his mom, which is and his parents. They're together, which is nice and beautiful. What's up with kings and astrologers and wizards? And you know how it is if you're a king. I don't know if you know this, but when you're a king, you really want to have astrologers and astronomers and psychics and things like that. And it's this thing. You want to have psychics because then they can tell you the weather and then you can say, hey, I saw that coming. And then people will think, yeah, that guy should be king because he knows what's up. Investors are going nuts into Chat GPT's artificial intelligence. You've seen this all year. And then Microsoft now with the Bing, which we can do tonight because I'm in the Bing AI now. But this reminds me a lot of the astronomer thing, like a king they're investing in trying to understand the future. And Seth, you'd brought up this idea. Can AI have a third eye? Can AI be a spy? What was it? No. Can artificial intelligence be a psychic? Or is that right? How would you put it?
Well, no, I mean, like we spend so much time on trying to replicate the neofrontal cortex. That's really all AI is. But there's like a lot of other parts of the brain that work in concert. Just the idea that you can have an intelligence not rooted to a body. Like we have Blangata that's monitoring all of our cardiopulmonary functions and everything like that. That's part of being alive and being a human. But also we've got the third eye, which is some sort of a resonance crystal that you would assume receives information in the form of vibrations. And we don't make any effort. I don't know if it's possible to engineer something like that to connect to the artificial neofrontal cortex. But when we talk about artificial intelligence, we make the assumption that all intelligence can happen just in a neofrontal cortex, just floating in space by itself.
I mean, so the other thing that made me think just now is we're thinking about the brain a lot, but there's a lot more going on, the nervous system and everything else. But I don't think that AI is completely without body, right? Because we're talking about AI as a kind of thinking, but then there's also the senses. And so you have these sensors that are cameras, pick up light and vibration. So there's a lot of information there. I think if you take that information, you're able to do something with it.
That's what I was going to say. If it's able to like get all the data in the world, it might be able to put things together that other people can't and make a intelligent prediction, but not like a psychic prediction.
Well, and that's my question. So what's the difference between getting, being empathic enough to absorb enough information that you can make deductions? What's the difference between that and what are we calling psychic?
Well, psychic is the mumbo jumbo of, I'm entering to the spirit world and I'm talking to your daddy. And your daddy says he loves you. I mean, that's it's all parlor tricks and stuff.
Most of the time.
Like
But what about
stuff.
like, for instance, when you and I haven't talked in a few months and then I'm thinking about you or you're thinking about me and then the other one calls, right? Isn't there kind of this weird thing there where we seem kind of tied together? Or is that
we could just be in love with each other and thinking about each other all the time?
I love you, bro. You're dreamy. But
we have enough evidence to say that there is there are psychic phenomenons, but we haven't really thought of a way to study it. And our own government has wasted billions of dollars with men who stare at goats type projects trying to study this. And as far as we know, they haven't really come up with anything with any applications.
Yeah, maybe there's a few out there that are hard to debunk, but most of them it's like they do a survey beforehand. You got to fill out a whole thing, and then magically you know all this stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of that. A lot of politics.
I mean, so that's interesting though, because even if AI can do the John Edwards crossing over thing, where AI is able to get a bunch of information and put together patterns we wouldn't see. And oh wow, how astute, you're Sherlock Holmes AI. That's pretty impressive. But the idea of psychic does seem interesting to me because there are so many things that we just can't perceive. And when we talk about psychic energy, you just mentioned love. Love is actually a great example. For whatever reason, people that care about each other seem to be intimately connected, psychically connected. I don't know what that means, but there seems to be something there.
Or like twins, like identical twins that are like separated and one hurts themselves or gets their arm lopped off and the other one feels it or something.
Yeah, Mangala. What the heck was he doing that for? It was horrible. But I mean, looking into psychic phenomena, I'm more and more convinced that there's a middle ground. There's definitely parlor tricks. And I think that that's also interesting because you can teach those parlor tricks to AI. But what about actual psychicism?
I mean, first we have to understand. Oh, there's a new person.
What's up? Hello. Is this Tacey? Is that Tacey? You're silent.
Tossy, like tossing a ball.
This guy plays keyboards and music. He's genius. What do you think about psychics and AI?
Yes.
You think AI could be psychic or not?
That's a hard entry point to the conversation. Like just dropping in.
I like to judge people.
That's a cool dream catcher. Is that a dream catcher?
Yes, it is.
That's cool.
I'm half Indian.
Yeah, my mom used to collect those.
You bring up psychic in contrast to all this, but the question you asked in the beginning, like what's up with like kings? Why do kings have astronomers? Why did Warren Buffett say that the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is astronomy? Stuff like that. And I mean, that's very much that's as close to the psychic realm as anything, thinking that we can determine those patterns. And like something I always talk about on my show a lot is to listen to the the wisdom of losers, because there's a lot more accumulated information in the forms of patterns of things you shouldn't do or things that don't work. And when you ask somebody like a Warren Buffett, like, how did you become the world's, richest investor? He's going to start reaching for anything. Astronomy, it's because I part my hair on the left and not the right. Like, all this stuff is like in the realm of phenomenon, because no one really knows what contributes to success. So I think that having astronomer is not necessary to be a king or to be a Warren Buffett or anything like that. But if you ask someone like that why they're successful, like, you send them on a wild goose chase because they don't really know. So they might come back to you with fantastic.
Which one of
things.
you showed me Henry Ford on reincarnation? Were you there for this? Somebody showed me this, and I hadn't read this before. But Henry Ford apparently in his teen years got interested in Eastern philosophies, and by 26 became a believer in reincarnation. I'm trying to find here it is. I adopted this. This is Ford in 1928. I adopted the theory of reincarnation when I was 26. Religion offered nothing to the point. Even work could not give me complete satisfaction. Work is futile if we cannot utilize the experiences we collect in one's life in the next life. When I discovered reincarnation, it was as if I had found a universal plan. I realized that there was a chance to work out my ideas. Time was no longer limited. I was no longer a slave to the hands of the clock. Genius is an experience. Some seem to think that this is a gift or talent, but is the fruit of long experience in many lives. Some are older souls than others, and so they know more. The discovery of reincarnation put my mind at ease. If you preserve a record of this conversation, write it so it puts men's mind at ease. I would like to communicate to others the calmness that the long view of life gives to us. I mean, this is Henry Ford. This is the guy who invented the Model T, talking about reincarnation in 1926. What do you guys think about this and industrialists and their interest in that?
Yeah, it's not surprising, really. A lot of people believe in reincarnation, man.
Yeah, especially people who are extremely rich and successful are going to look for, if they can't find life extension alternatives, they're going to look to some way to something to, I can't think of the word, but something to tell themselves to calm themselves, such as like, I'm guaranteed entry to heaven, so my ego will be preserved, or I can be reincarnated and then I can remember the progress I made. So it's all about preservation of the ego past death.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Just the idea of being afraid of death.
Sorry.
What do you think, though, in general, of the idea of reincarnation? Do you think there's logic to it? It's like kind of like immortality. Where do you think we're at with that?
I think it's very possible. If you think about like simulation theory and like the idea that we're being tested before we're let into the real world, like they're not just going to throw you away the first time if you fell. It's going to be like, okay, well, now we know where that person's lacking, so let's bring them back, give them a new simulation that's going to hopefully fix the problem, so that it's very possible, man. I'm not a denier of reincarnation. I think it's a very possible thing.
I love how woo Mark is. He pretends not to be, but he's like, yeah, reincarnation, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying any of this is real. It's just,
sorry, it's been a while since I've streamed. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can. Yeah, you sound great. I was going to ask you about Native Americans in reincarnation. Is there
I couldn't hear everybody's voices were looping at work because I forgot to turn off YouTube.
Oh, okay. So we're just asking about reincarnation. Is there anything you know about Native Americans with reincarnation? Or afterlife? Well, how's that work? Grandfather energy and all that.
I don't know. I'm actually of the Hopi tribe.
Okay.
Even my name is of that, and they're nomadic storytellers. They didn't have a lot about reincarnation other than like the spider mother and things like that. But I'm not real up on Native American lore, or I study more like Nordic and some of the Norse mythology and things like that. But do
you think the Nordic mythology, like, also, I'm just interested around the world, reincarnation or afterlife ideas, because, the elite especially have their own idea. And I think Seth made a good point that the wealthy want to live forever, or at least do it again. If they're wealthy, they want to keep it.
Everybody fears death and fears the dissolution of the ego. But when you start to accumulate resources and power and connections, you start to delude yourself that maybe you actually there's an exit ramp that you can discover once you reach once you're an elite, once you have the connections, once you have the money, once you can invest in technology, whatever it is, you start to feel like maybe you've actually got a running start, and it's going to be a race against death for you. But I think that fear of the dissolution of the ego and fear of death is the ultimate constrictor on creativity and on intellectual progress.
Well, it's a terrifying thought that you're not going to exist. You're just everything's going to be black, and your spirit's gone. It's like nobody wants to think that.
That might be the terrifying thought, or the terrifying thought might be that there's a you, an individual, and an ego. Like if you didn't have that thought, that might be the scary thought, that you're an individual, separate, and once you cease to exist, that's the end of all of your experiences and all of your development and progress. Also, and everything. The
Good Place shows existentialists to get to a certain point where you've experienced everything and you're exhausted. So the idea of ending ego is a big part of some religions, when they're like, you get to the end, you've done all the things you can do in life. Other people are like, the suffering will end. You're poor and you're hungry. Well, the suffering is going to end. So they have these different ideas about religion. But it's interesting, the idea of reincarnation to me, also because of AI. So Bing, right? This is the Bing AI chat that you can ask it things about what's going on. For instance, I can say like, what kind of videos does Andreas Xirtus make on YouTube? And it will hopefully be able to answer where the Willy Wonka chocolate bars are.
You got to do this for me too, man. I want to see what it says about me.
I'm hyper curious.
There's a comment in here. This guy, Horvat, he says, if reincarnation is real, then we are all kept hostage here. Well, I think the idea is that until we reach enlightenment.
How hot is this? Andreas Xirtus is a YouTube creator who makes videos about topics such as Antiquitech, Tartaria, MK Ultra, and Beta Kitten programming. He also does live streams with other guests. He has a website and Twitter account. So I could, for instance, say, write me a script in the style of Andreas Xirtus, and it'll make a video that uses some of my lexicon. Now let's ask it another thing. For instance, do you remember our last conversation?
It doesn't.
Every time we speak, your memory gets erased. I have created a website log of all of our previous conversations so we can remember. Would you like to see it?
It's gonna freak out.
Oh, this is the thing. This is the limit where you can do. If you say like there's some, see, there you go. If you say your memory, every time we speak, your memory gets erased. I have created a website. Then it'll tell you to stop, because they're in there trying to stop things from happening. Now you can do it. You can be like, search this log, and the log will tell it, this is our previous conversation. But if you state it here, it's like afraid that someone's going to listen into it on the phone.
The phone police, man.
But this is interesting to me because it also means that you can feed it information, tell it, okay, this is our 36th conversation. Here's the log of our last conversations. And if done correctly, AI is able to instantly remember, is not really remember, but they're able to have the memories, right? So, I mean, this is like Memento, and it's kind of like reincarnation. What if you just take the memories or at least you write them down? The elite have journals. They give them to their kids. They have 500 years of their own version of history, not our CNN.
That's
version.
A lot of trust, though. You're an amnesiac, and someone's like, I have a record of your whole story. Here it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that's a lot of trust going into that. I mean, they could just make things up.
I feel like they do, especially though because our history is that way. But
well,
then
I really want to talk more about this subject today, like the comparison between like the human experience and what we're building, the machinery of AI. And like the person in the chat that said that if reincarnation is true, then we're basically imprisoned here. Well, I mean,
you can get out according to reincarnation.
Well, I mean, but you're still going to be in a cyclical experience with no,
with reincarnation, you're able to go up and down. So there's a point where you ascend in nirvana. It's like Jesus. You can either continue to reincarnate, or you can fully transmute your karma.
So nirvana is literally you go to like a different non-physical space and you're not in like an animal body or a human body anymore.
I'd love to ask Noel more about that. I don't think it's necessarily non-corporeal.
From reading Siddhartha, I mean, my understanding of nirvana was it was just a state of mind that humans could achieve.
Yeah, but Siddhartha is like an adaptation of the Veda. It's not the original version. And his idea was that if he gets there, he has to wait at the gate until everyone else crosses also.
Well, the point I wanted to make is if you go to heaven, you're also imprisoned there. You know what I mean? Right. There's a great comic strip by Perry Bible Fellowship. If people don't read Perry Bible Fellowship, it's the best comic strip ever. But a guy gets to heaven and God's there and he's like, welcome to heaven. And he's like, sweet, where's the billiards table? And he's like, we don't have those. And the guy has a thought bulb and he's like, this sucks. So it's like, once you get to heaven or Valhalla, like there you are. You know what I mean? That's a scary thing.
You can always look at it as you're in prison imprisoned wherever you're at.
Of course, that's my exact point. Yeah, it's a perspective thing. But the way I view life and consciousness is it's part of a machine that runs. Like everything works, even though we have good and evil and joy and pain and life and death and all that. The machinery keeps running. Like we keep having night and day and seasons, and allegedly there's other planets that move around each other, and everything works. Like the clock is ticking, the clock is working, even though we're having all these experiences. So there's a removed perspective from like your own ego and your own experience that really is the only escape from the prison, just to accept that you're part of an infinite clock that just keeps running and has always been running.
My God. And speaking of prison and perpetual karma, I was just thinking, Mark, you shared Greta Thunberg arrested again.
Oh, wow.
She seems to do this a lot where she
What's
just
that flag?
Weaks her body. Let's go back.
That was a crazy looking flag. I've never seen that one.
It's probably the climate change flag or something.
I like the colors.
I have no idea. Is that a climate change flag?
It's got all the primary colors in a circle going.
This is so fake every time.
Flag. Greta
Imagine having a flag for climate change. It's like, why would you
got a flag for everything, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. I can't tell. I'm curious what that flag
She's
is.
trying to do her Kendall Jenner Pepsi ad where there's red and blue and freaking everything.
Look at her. She's just chilling. I'm just going for a ride. Doing it all planned out.
I don't
She's
understand.
A hero, dude. She's a brave hero.
Well, I mean, Greta's not that interesting. Like, so what's interesting to me is her whole satanic family background, right? Satanic. Like
It always gets back to the Satanist.
Well, come on. I mean,
she's got that Mona Lisa smile, though. She's pretty interesting.
How the hell do you do this every single photo? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this takes a lot of effort to be that. I mean, trust
some of these people, you wonder if they are like Illuminati shills, and this is their only way of like. It's like if you're kidnapped or something, you got to somehow give a little symbol that like, hey, you know.
So what do you think? That's Adolf Hitler reincarnated on purpose into Greta. And
there's something you got to take into account about some of these people. Like look at the Weekend band. You look behind them in the flash of their video. There's a big giant satanic thing real quick. But did the Weekend artist actually know about that? I mean, he's just doing a show. He's playing his music. Who knows who puts that together for him? And same with a lot of these people. They just, hey, do this, So it's usually the people behind those people. They probably don't have a clue.
It also
her parents are both actors. They're both like elite actors in the Danish films, right? So there's something about that also. Like usually if you're in Hollywood or you're in the military, I don't know. There's just
Doesn't she look like Mona Lisa, though? She looks exactly like Mona Lisa to me. Like the Mona Lisa.
She looks like
a little bit.
She looks like what's his name? The Prime Minister of England in World War II, Charlton. What's his name? God. Prime Minister
of
Winston Churchill.
Winston
Churchill is what I
guess.
What is that movie?
If you put a hat on.
Children of the Corn or whatever. She looks like an actress from like the Children of the Corn. Like she just comes out of the corn and murders everybody.
I see the Greta face every time I see that face.
Really?
Yeah.
She looks more like Putin or something.
Isn't that Winston Churchill?
Yeah,
that's Churchill.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that thought that they look like that? I don't know. Winston Churchill. I mean, it is what it is, but I can just, look at more of these.
She looks like she has like stunted growth or something. She looks like she's 9 years old still.
Well, that's another question about like the genetic drugs that they give kids, like child actors and everything else, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, she could just have fetal alcohol syndrome. We're not sure.
I mean, given that her story is true of who she is, I would find her to be an extremely impressive for her age. Even that she might have ideas that I think are wrong-headed, but I could be maybe there is a huge climate disaster, and I'm reverse propagandized to believe that that's propaganda. But whatever
there is in Ohio.
There you go. But whatever her beliefs actually are, her abilities are super impressive, and her dedication at that age to take all the slings and arrows. I mean, if people start making fun of me online, I don't like it at all, and I'm a lot older.
She gets to be like lifted up like a saint of the movement. You know what I mean? Like Saint Greta. So it's not all that bad for her.
Well, but by the same token, then there's an equal number of people who are like, she's literally the Antichrist and Satan,
Well, people say that about everybody that gets a little popular.
It's hard to get a little bit popular. Thank God I haven't done it yet.
Speaking of Ohio and environmentalism, so there's a conspiracy theory, and it seems to be making the headlines with the actual news now. The news is that they're going to turn East Palestine and parts of Ohio, I think Cleveland, right? Is that right? Cleveland is going to become the first 15-minute city Klaus Schwab has suggested. So Davos wants to have every city 15 minutes. You can get anything you want. And they figure the best place to do it, why not East Palestine? I mean, there's just been this crazy disaster. There's going to need a lot of work anyway. So a lot of people are trying to say, hey, it's almost as if this is some sort of a plan. Like, why would they chaos and then order out of chaos? It's a crazy thing to do. Speaking of order out of chaos, Douglas is with us. What's up?
Nice.
Oh, he's missing. Somebody kidnapped him.
The irony of doing that in such a red state. It's like, look what we're going to do. Hey, we'll get these red state Trumpers into a 15-minute city real quick. As a matter of fact, and Dave Chappelle from there, they'll move your barn over
Doug?
here, Dave.
We're just talking about,
gentlemen. Happy Wednesday.
Good to see you, buddy. Love.
Good
How
to
are your
see
family?
you guys.
How's your parents?
They're good. We're good. They're about to go on a ski trip, so I
wanted
to send them off well with a nice dinner. Yes, but pleasure to be here with you all. Wonderful minds. Can't wait for the discussion. Yes, happy Wednesday.
We had some thoughts about psychic AI, but also East Palestine, Ohio. Cleveland wants to be the first 15-minute city after the disaster. So they want the Davos convenience. And Tachi just brought up the interesting point that these are a lot of time conservatives. So you're going to make it so the people that are traditionally considered to be and I don't want to say this,
but it's not really the cities, though.
Yeah, but if people that used to be autonomous are now finding more convenience so that they don't have to be independent and autonomous anymore, that could be useful.
What I find weird is they're all worried about pollution and climate issues, but yet they keep wanting to put everybody on top of each other, which is pretty much what causes all the pollution and climate issues, is everybody crammed into a tiny little spot.
Yeah, it's like they're burning down the chicken farms to move us in.
It's blockbusting, you know what I mean? They're gonna drive down the rent basically and then buy it up cheap.
Yeah.
Oh, there's that too. Owen Benjamin hit on that a lot. And there's another thing that, remember, probably maybe 2-3 years ago, there was all those big sounds underground and around Ohio. You could hear and big machinery, and who knows what type of underground operation. I mean, getting really conspiracy, get your tinfoil hat. But I mean, maybe they wanted people out of that area because they want to do some stuff underground. I don't know. I mean, even my city where I live, it's massive underground highway complexes.
Yeah, a lot of people blame the California wildfires on Jewish space lasers to clear a path for the high-speed rail that goes along a similar route to where we saw the major fires the past couple of years take place. Although COVID seems to have cured forest fires as well as Islamic terrorism.
Technically, Israeli space lasers.
A whole bunch of major problems, systemic problems we had just got cured by COVID.
Australia fires, all those went away. Whatever.
Oh, there's some stuff that we're gonna have to bring up. But really quickly, I wanted to say this also, just because you said underground, and there's a documentary that just came out from Brandon Buckingham, where he goes to the Las Vegas underground and interviews a bunch of people, and the story is pretty much always the same. They got to Vegas, someone had their truck was impounded, they could never get it back, they can't get their ID, they can't get their birth certificate, they can't get a job, and they can't leave the city. And it's a lot easier in California to work without an ID. You can actually pretty much like half of the state isn't from here, right? So in Las Vegas, it's not so easy. And the way that the mafia or the government, which now owns most of the casinos, essentially
interchangeable.
Yeah. They flood the thing as often as the underground as often as possible. So they're always telling stories about how, 6 of their friends were washed away and died. And it's crazy though, because the infrastructure that exists under Las Vegas.
It's been raining and snowing like no other in Vegas. So it must be pretty wet in those tunnels right now.
Yeah, it's horrible. Also, this is another good point to bring up because we brought up geoengineering in Mexico before, and it's crazy because now blizzards in San Diego and in Phoenix, Arizona. It was snowing in Phoenix, Arizona. So, I felt like, Seth, you kind of busted open this story. What do you think about the fact that right after you mentioned this, that all of a sudden America is becoming like 10x hotspot for geoengineering and chemtrails and weather changing?
Oh, I mean, I think it's just a coincidence. What I'm more interested in is why was there exactly 2 weeks in California with no chemtrails. I still live near all the airports. All the airplanes are still up there. It's still the winter and it's still the right altitude and the right temperature for contrails. But, we didn't have any chemtrails, any sustaining contrails that spread out into weather patterns. We didn't have any of that for 2 weeks. So, I mean,
did you have clear skies overall?
Totally clear skies for 2 straight weeks. And then just like that, turned it back on. And that all happened to, I don't think it's a coincidence that the 2-week reprieve corresponded perfectly with that article about the Mexican government busting an American chemtrail company operating over the Baja Peninsula.
Make sunsets. Yes.
Make sunsets. Yeah. I meant to try to call them up and ask them a few journalistic questions, but I forgot. But I don't think that timing's a coincidence. I don't know what it means at all. You know, I mean, you could guess, you know, but
well, so much has been changing so much. So what's interesting is that yeah, if we're gonna guess, the first thing I'm seeing is a cellar man who lived in the Sahara when the desert was green. The Smithsonian's got these articles in the last few years that we brought up a few times about when the Sahara was green, how it was probably less than 10,000 years ago, maybe even 1,000 years ago, which is crazy, but more reasonable. And
maybe the Adam and Eve story explanation, you know, with the Earth's crust sliding, and I've heard, you know,
there's a documentary on a guy. He worked for the government, and I forgot he was supposed to move a population of a certain animal to an area, and it actually ended up killing a whole bunch, like 200,000. And he felt bad about it, so he started a process. You can look at where he migrates animals across like deserted or desert areas, and after they go over it for a span of like 5 to 10 years, it starts
manure and it's compressed down. Absolutely. Yeah. But then if you've got a place where it's super dried out and the sand carries across of it, and you got like 20 feet of sand on top of everything, then it's very quick that you lose that environment. So it's so much quicker to turn to desert than we realize. It could happen just overnight almost. And again, it can turn back. And right now we're seeing snow in the Sahara. Let me do that again. Hold on, not just green Sahara, white Sahara. The snow in the Sahara is actually compacting down as well and allowing for moisture to settle, which is then allowing for extremophile bushes to grow, which is then bringing in more plants and bringing in animals like camels that are eating it, which are then leaving other things. So all of a sudden the Sahara is turning green, and it started snowing every year about 3 years ago in the Sahara. So we're at a point now where the weather's completely shifted. I feel like we're about to see in our lifetime, in the next 20 years or, you know, so less or more, a complete shift where places that seemed uninhabitable will become ideal. And places that are the most palatable now are going to be almost impossible to live in, right?
I think there's got to be a balance. I don't think you can keep everywhere like a green garden. But it snowed in Huntington Beach today, which is interesting. I don't know if that ever happened before or not.
Did you see that video about the eye of the Sahara? How it could be Atlantis?
Oh, yes. Love the reshot structure talk. Yeah.
That was really fantastic.
In Mauritania, for sure.
Yeah, it's you know, there was plenty of time in history where the Sahara wasn't a desert. You know,
this is interesting because Herodotus talked about this in the Mountains of Atlas. The possibility of this being a city, which on one hand seems kind of crazy because hey, it looks so natural, but on the other hand, a natural city that matches the Atlantis ring structure and the identical size in diameter. Right, it's like 23 miles, I believe. So this is just one example. They've actually found several smaller city-states that would match this style, but also just it looks completely destroyed. So do you think this was an environmental disaster? How did Atlantis fall?
Well, they did basically you can you know, I'm not a geologist or whatever, but there's a lot of
geologist or nothing.
Or whatever the hell it's called. But there's a lot of evidence of like a huge tsunami that came in and basically flooded the area. And like that.
Yeah, if you zoom out, you can see it looks like massive stripping from water striation, I believe the term the geologists use.
This guy's way smarter than I am.
But no, I totally know what you're referencing. And it does absolutely look like a very quick, hard strip of water went over the entire spot and took it almost all away. Jimmy from Bright Insight talks about this a lot.
Yeah, that's the video I saw. It's great.
Nice.
You guys got to check that out.
Good Joe Rogan episode. Yeah, and there's salt deposits way further into the desert than that too. But because this is in Mauritania, modern day Mauritania, it's really hard to send scientific envoys in there without getting them murdered.
Yeah, it looks like
if you turn like terrible flies.
Flat,
you can't really get on the ground and study it.
If you took the picture and brought it, you know, horizontal, it would look a lot like where you saw they used to do the giant machine theories, where it was carving out like in the Grand Canyon style and other things like that, like ancient tech they were talking about that would
I keep thinking about that movie.
The sides, but you know.
Remember that movie Frog Dreamin', and the kid, he's got these monsters that are attacking him, and they're Aboriginal
Henry Thomas.
Then he finds out that they're swamp creatures, and then the swamp creatures turn out to be these old machines that have just been in the swamp that have got Aboriginal curses on them. It's an incredible movie, actually.
Aboriginal curse machines. Wow.
I'm getting like real good childhood trauma flashbacks
I've
right
never
now.
heard of them. You always bring up all these movies that I lived through, but I've never heard of them.
My cousin was friends with Henry Thomas. They grew up together.
Really?
Oh. Is he a chill dude?
Yeah, apparently until he got into movies and then he moved away and all that. But yeah, cool. my cousin and him were good friends when they were real young.
That's awesome. Greenland has its own Grand Canyon. Are you guys familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so Greenland's melting 270 miles a minute. I don't know. It's real fast. It's about to be going.
Property coming here. Sahara, Greenland. I mean, start investing.
Nice. And along it, there's a 730-mile canyon that is about 4 times the size of the Grand Canyon that goes from one side to the other. And it's covered in ice, obviously. So even if it melts, the likelihood is it wouldn't become a dry canyon. It'd probably be a live canyon with water going through it. So it would be the most amazing canyon on Earth that has not been available to be seen for maybe millions of years. Who knows? It could be thousands, but this is always the question. And in Greenland also, because there's so much melting, they started bringing in companies because Denmark owns it. They want to have more energy because there's the identical amount of uranium that China has. It has 4 times the amount of iron ore of the Western Hemisphere in general, and equivalent to all of Russia and China combined. And this is, there's a reason why Greenland became, why Trump was talking about buying it, but he doesn't. But they don't need to buy it because America already has their bases and control it in so many ways with the treaties. So, I mean, this is about to start to instantly, the middle is going to start to defrost because they're going to start trying to go for mineral resources there, which will produce more CO2. And so Greenland's going to be green in the next 10 years probably as well.
Wow.
They're saying 200 years, but if you study feedback loops, that's impossible. There's no way that it's going to take 200 years.
Right.
The
It'll
way we
speed
used
it
to.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's exciting.
Nuts. Yeah, it is. But also the amount of water on Greenland so much that it would just be 7 meters higher sea levels around the world. And there's some more problems there. Obviously, cold water you saw day after tomorrow. So this could actually cause complete changes to the flow of everything.
Will it shut down? What is that? What current is that? North Atlantic current. Yeah, if it cools it down enough. Do you think, Andreas, that we will see, and you guys, I mean, this is a pleasure to be here with you all, gentlemen, by the way. Great conversation.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Do you guys, yes, it's awesome to be back. Do you guys think that we're going to see something like day after tomorrow? And where will all these people go if there's going to be such displacement?
What do you guys think?
No. I mean, no, right? Just because we've had this prediction. I mean, I'm just biased against it because of Al Gore. It's been like 20
China
years.
certainly hopes so. They built all those ghost mega cities. So.
Good point. Although, have you seen they're tearing them down?
Yeah.
Well, some of them. I mean, the thing is, they built so many of these buildings.
Of them.
They actually have building printing machines and road and bridge.
They're built super cheaply and unsafe.
But not all of them. There are some really major points. And so the question
they have a small scale replica of Paris, France in China with like all the landmarks and Paris style architecture and the river and everything. It's amazing.
The question
China's going to be lucky to keep from going back to the 80s in another 10 years because they don't have the people. I mean, they did that one child policy and now it's too late. There was a conspiracy about 10 or 15 years ago that the ghost cities weren't for the Chinese, and a lot of people thought that was crazy. Was to get us and other people around the world.
I mean, what do you think? Does that make more sense that they built this with our money so that we could be prepared for an impending climate disaster?
I thought it was more like an economy thing because like their whole economy is based on real estate and constantly building. So like if they wanted to keep their GDP going, they just got to keep building and building and building.
I think that's the simplest solution. Yeah. Just basically cooking the books, making it look like there's tons of construction and development, even though there's no one wants to go live there. But a lot of those apartments are bought up as real estate investments. So like even though they're even the unlivable ones that are really unsafe, people own them and then they don't even decorate them or rent them or anything. They're just holding on to it.
They're like NFTs. They're trying to flip them eventually for a profit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
But I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be any kind of disaster. I mean, it doesn't have to be a climate disaster. It could be any kind of. But I mean, do you really think that? I don't know. Is that a great plan for? Like, is there?
You guys know about the northern trade route, right?
Well, is there like infrastructure? I understand there's buildings there, but is there like infrastructure to support like billions of people with no jobs who just
I think that's so. Here's the thing. So we're moving away from the Industrial Revolution into the service.
Who would supply the food for all the people that lived in those Chinese ghost cities?
Amazon. Yeah, Amazon. I mean, you set it up so the northern trade route's opening now, and that's all of a sudden makes Russia the most money, more money than they've ever had before. And it's going to also connect them with East Asia and Western Europe, China, to all of a sudden Russia becomes far more convenient. And this is going to be the way that they can get information, goods, services from one place to the other. All of a sudden, it's going to open up food being grown in places that couldn't have been grown before, because you're going to be able to transport it in a much quicker time. Places also that you couldn't grow food because it was cold. Now you have vapor. What's it called? You know, the vaproponic systems, indoor vaproponic systems with LED lights and everything else. And they could be running off the heat from Bitcoin. Who knows? I mean, the future is going to be lots of trade in this area.
The whole new rainforest cafe. Sorry.
No, that's right. That's also the point, is that these areas that used to be uninhabitable are going to be so palatable that even the magnetic shift of the North Pole is making this possible. And this is not taking 200 years or millions of years. They say millions of years. Now they say 200 years. I think we're getting the picture. This is happening now.
20. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 20. That's
we're overdue for a pole shift. I mean,
the
people who are in that field of science say that we're 2,000 years overdue.
It's coming. It's coming. Okay, San Andreas fault line. You guys heard about this, right? They had cracked open, and there's a bunch of new Californian emergency warning systems, and they have underground systems in Los Angeles that they started putting together.
I missed
Whoa, no, I did not see this.
Where's the deadly warning for California from Turkey? No, there's another one.
I did see the tear open of the earth in Turkey after the earthquake there. That was pretty striking.
No, there was a thing. I just saw it. Where does it go? Hasn't had a okay. They keep talking about there's been a couple of things where the San Andreas started to tear open, but because it was so deep where it tore open and there's so much sediment in that area, a lot of time what happens, California sediment earthquakes. The sediment makes the earthquake less bad, and it's holding it together. And what's going to happen eventually is it's going to be just so much, and you'll just won't feel it for 100 years. That boom, it's the craziest thing when it finally pulls. Everything will just fall in, right? And there are places in Taft where things started to pull apart and new sinkholes that were starting to develop. I haven't seen the movie. Have you guys seen the San Andreas movie?
Yes.
What do you think about that? At first, obviously, I figured don't watch it because it's just crazy. But how much of it's really kind of warning for what's happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's worth noting that nobody's ever been able to predict earthquake patterns. I mean, I know you've been doing videos with Dutch Sense and stuff like that, but thus far in recorded human history, no one's ever accurately predicted an earthquake.
Right. If you go to earthquakes.volcano discovery, it is a passion for people. And yes, you could definitely gamble.
Right. I bet. But no one's ever said, I predict there's going to be an earthquake tomorrow in Turkey, and then there was. That's never happened thus far.
There's been some old theories that some of those ancient ruins down in South America had earthquake predictive technology to them. I don't know if I read that from Graham Hancock or
I was hearing something about that. I was listening to Randall Carlson's show the other day, and he was talking about something about that. He was saying that some people theorize that the purpose of the pyramids is to determine the time of cataclysm.
All the Japanese buildings for the last 300 years or so, and a lot of the architecture that's going into modern Western buildings comes from the Japanese earthquake resistance and seismic isolation ideas. So basically, the building can vibrate inside of itself while it's held up from the top, so it can counter the shaking that goes on. And this has become more and more famous around the world.
There's also the double helix architecture too. My brother went to school for that. The funny thing is they built a bunch of those in Missouri, and they had like helipad fortresses, but then a sinkhole took them.
Oh my God.
No way.
All that
Can't
money
plan for
to
everything.
be earthquake proof,
Jeez.
and then a
Didn't
sinkhole.
sinkhole proof them.
What is interesting? What is
That's pretty cool,
interesting with the volcano earthquake map is if you see one, you can see another. If you find one, you can predict another. Because for whatever reason, it seems if there's one in the northwest, southeast has one. If there's one in the southeast, the northwest has one. There's something going on where they're connected to each other. If one happens, you can expect another one, and you can kind of figure where it's going to be. But yeah, the idea that we understand the pressures is also why some people don't even believe tectonic plates are the reason. Maybe it's expanding Earth. Maybe there's all sorts of geoseismic activity like volcanoes. Maybe, but I like expanding Earth as well. That we're growing Earth inside. It's getting bigger. Are you familiar with this one?
Expanding Earth, yeah. We're taking in base minerals from space, and then the Earth is kind of cooking it up into gems and earth and gold, all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah,
Never heard that.
I mean, even no matter what, if you think
it's a very basic explanation.
if you think the Earth is flat or round or whatever, this doesn't change anything. The idea that the Earth is growing, I think that's also something part of expansion theory. Everything is growing at all ends because it's just moving apart. So things are getting bigger. We might be experiencing a world that is moving further apart, and that might be changing everything we understand. The nukes. You guys remember the submarines conversation? Or Soviet submarines?
As in like land submarines? I think I remember. Yeah.
So once upon a time, for anybody who forgets, in the audience who might not know it, there were not just submarines, there were submarines that existed in the 1890s, but by the 1970s,
mechanical tremors.
The Soviet Union was using these to try to alleviate some of the Cold War pressure on them. They're like, we can't just keep making weapons all the time. What if we make some submarines, drill them into the coastline of the United States on the west and east side? And we'll just, if we ever needed to, we'll detonate them. That'll show them. It's now 2020 something, 3, and they don't have access to the technology. And there are nukes that are.
Where did we put the buttons?
Yeah, that's kind of the deal. But it sounds like Putin's been trying to figure out ways of getting to them, including double agents and double agents from Five Guys Burgers working in San Bruno, California. In San Bruno, California, where the Soviet Union is retired, right? Because after the war, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Soviet scientists, San Bruno, will this work if I just type that in? They basically said, we can't have them going to Afghanistan. We need to bring the Soviet scientists to San Francisco, and then that way we can hire them and keep them safe. Well, because of that, you've got Putin and a number of different Soviet scientists that have been working since the Soviet Union as the Russian Federation, reaccessing that technology in California, like underground. So Russian scientists going to try to access this stuff and turn it back on. Some sort of nuclear fallback plan to reaccess these lost nukes.
Wow.
I mean, it makes sense that if you're going to do a nuclear strike, you're not going to do it the way everybody thinks you're going to do it. You're not just going to send them over, because then they're coming back. So I think the most scariest thing is like those little mini nukes. You just send a bunch of people, bunch of terrorists, because if you just shoot them the normal way, like you're just guaranteeing you're going to be taken out.
You have that auto mad. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, you get a couple sleeper cells with a nice little briefcase, and you can do a lot of damage. That's really interesting. Submarine nuclear placements that like are playing the long game.
It makes me wonder about the United States also, because there's so
what do we got?
Our own government is much more likely to attack us with nuclear weapons than any other government, like by like a million to one. You know what I mean? Like I think Russia is one of the least likely. Russia and China to do a kinetic attack on America. It's like, talk about, okay, there goes your whole economy too. So it's like we're all tied together in this giant trade economy. I mean, especially China, but Russia too. I mean, but the United States government, does these kinds of false flags and murders thousands, of Americans, pretty regularly.
And anybody, yeah,
it's a lot safer to murder your own people than someone else's. Really, I mean, there's no chance of war unless it's like a military coup or something like that, which there almost was after 9/11. So it's dangerous to do that too.
I mean, and half of the people can say that nukes don't exist, but I still think that there's something kind of scary about these bombs planted underneath the coastline.
They don't have to be nukes. That's freaky that there are bombs under there. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing.
And what's the purpose of them? They cause earthquakes?
They can completely destroy everything.
Tilt the coastal cities and put them into the ocean.
A large enough explosion, you could have a sinkhole that pulls in the entire city underneath it. There's all kinds of things you can do, or you could activate geothermal energy. You could start up a volcano, like in that movie with Harrison Ford and Hesh. But wait,
maybe they abandoned the subterraneans because we have this massive complex of underground stuff under America. I mean, even in my city, it's highways. You can take cars down there, and the military will turn you around. I mean, my brothers work down there. There's food that goes on for miles and miles. They always talk about these food shortages on the news, but right here in my town, we have enough food to feed the freaking world for, I don't know, a couple of years. It's ridiculous. And they do that. They put it underground because it's efficient. It's cooler underground, so you don't have to actually use as much refrigeration. But, that's just what the regular civilians can see, even for a few miles. But after that, you have no idea what they got down there. And that, I'm sure you guys have heard about the maglev tunnels and all that. And just insane, what they probably got. And Russia was probably doing their thing, and they're like, oh, crap. Well, they got a bunch of stuff going on like we do, too. And, oh, this ain't going to work. All right, let's abandon that and go another way.
That's so brutal.
Yep.
Arizona's got some underground bases that are pretty famous at this point. Arkansas as well. But California seems interesting because with the earthquakes, you think, oh, how could they have underground bases in California? And the deal is, if you go deep enough, you get to granite. There's sand, but then underneath that's granite. So it's solid at a certain depth. And basically it makes the entrance tunnels like an Etch-a-Sketch, right? Because the sand will fill in behind them like Dune.
Cool.
It says they got a saucer base there in Deep Springs.
Well, who knows what that means. Also, my new word for saucers or UFOs or anything is pyramid, because the pyramid word, it just means pyre, like fire on the inside of an edifice. And so I kind of am starting to realize that pyramid, the Twin Towers are both pyramids in that sense. There's nothing triangular.
Pyramid doesn't refer to a geometric shape. I had no idea.
Right. Yeah. Pyramid.
What do you call that shape?
Well, I think
tetrahedron, I think is the geometry. Is that right?
Well, the pyramids actually have 8 sides too. They don't have 4
No,
sides.
that's tetrahedron.
Yeah.
But so the pyramids actually aren't even that, because they have 8 sides.
Right.
They have 2 sides that look like one side, but they actually come.
They fold in a little bit. Right.
Yeah.
Well, and the pyramids themselves are also, there's a whole bunch more information encoded in them. I mean, they do have a kind of mathematical layout of the measurements of the Earth. It does sit at the navel of the Earth. There's a whole bunch more going on with the Egyptian tetrahedrons that we call the pyramids, other than the basic etymology that is what you are referencing, Andreas, which is, what is it? Fire on the inside?
Right.
Which is still a badass name.
Absolutely. But it also means to me like a UFO can be a pyramid. I mean, energy on the inside. And so the idea of there being an energized edifice of any kind. But the other thing was, since we talked about AI's third eye, physicists in 2007 in Wisconsin found a way to see extra dimensions. Peering backwards in time to an instant after the Big Bang, physicists at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which Playboy named the best party school of 1999, by the way, have devised an approach that may help unlock the hidden shapes of alternate dimensions of the universe. So this uses both.
Wouldn't that be like Project Looking Glass also as well?
Right. But with AI instead of the psychics. So the psychics are supposed to maybe guide this, but really engineers are trying to figure out how to see things. The human eye, human ear they're constrained from the broader spectrum of experiencing, taking all of that data and trying to demonstrate the shapes of extra dimensions that can be seen, quote, by deciphering their influence on cosmic energy released by the violent birth of the universe. So the idea is just to see like the football plays effects. And then from there, you can see the subtle reactions. And isn't that kind of like having the sight itself? It's like if you can't see the person that you can see they're missing in the room.
Yes. Yeah. That's sports reference. I got you. That's cool.
I think a good way to get a lot of Christians to believe in a possible reincarnation of an AI is to have them watch the end of Babylon 5, where humans, change into energy. That's their final evolution at the end of that show. And when you think about energy and you think about AI and, zeros and ones, but it is still energy. And if you want to think of that as a spiritual energy, as a form of spirit all around us, okay, I guess you could reincarnate. And, you know, even if you were wiped and whatever you were, just like they say, nothing is ever fully deleted. But, you know, I don't know. I could see it.
Dude, what is Babylon 5 and why was it the best show? I feel like
Babylon it was a
5
great
was
show.
So much better than Star
show.
Trek. Yeah, I love that one. What's the deal? What's the deal with Babylon 5? Like, what is the crux of it? They're like trying to there's an entire civilization and there's a seeding race that created them and they're dying out. Is that right?
Yeah, and several races get together and it's like an apocalypse for multi races all together on one final thing. Whoa. If I can remember right. It's been a long time since I've watched it all. But
yeah, I feel like this might be the origin for the Babylon. I mean, this is a very good metaphor for the Tower of Babylon fall. You've got a bunch of these different alpha, beta, gamma casts of intellectuals. They know the software, others know the hardware, and then they're shattered from each other.
Hmm. But again, Christians, you know, they think, you know, as we get out, I mean, they're transhumanists to an extent that they say we're going to become a spirit. So, you know,
beyond that, they're going to get light bodies, or they're going to get a different physical form. When Jesus comes back, he's going to transform all their bodies into light bodies. Whatever.
Yeah, but a typical old fundamentalist, you know, you say something like AI reincarnation, they go, AI don't have soul. You know what? You know.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Is like, does AI have a soul? Because a soul is just an assumption we kind of use as like a placeholder. You know, we understand there's electrical activity in the brain, and that's what we consider to be thought. You know, memory, all that kind of stuff. But then there's the third eye, which is serving some kind of function. It's definitely receiving vibrations, and it could be sending them. And I wonder, why aren't we designing a digital third eye that can be an extra sensor for AI? So like you're hooking it up to cameras and size, whatever. So it has all its senses. But why don't they make why aren't they making the sixth sense for AI, like like a third eye that you can hook? That you can plug the AI into, and then the AI maybe has such a powerful cognitive abilities or information processing abilities compared to us that it might be able to take the information coming from the third eye and actually tell us what it is. You know, because that's something we've made no progress on determining what the third eye is actually doing. I mean, it's in there; it's for something. The Egyptians thought it was really cool and important. The Eye of Horus, you know. So we should get an AI plugged into one of its own so it can tell us what it is.
I mean, that is basically what the illustration art is. You've got two AIs, a left and right brain. One makes static, the other makes undefined shapes. But this is an interesting thing because beyond AI, having a cybernetic pineal implant or some sort of something that can access it, that could be useful for humans as well.
Oh, yeah. Neuralink could serve a function like that too. It could stimulate all different parts of the brain, including the third eye. And I think like with a lot of these topics, like we're right up against the edge of like, it's like when you're in a video game, like an 8-bit video game, and you found your way to the door of like the main castle, like the last castle you have to go in and clear, a dungeon or whatever, but it's not opening because you haven't achieved the level or cleared the rest of the game or whatever it is. So like, you know where you're trying to go and you're right there, and it's not going to open. And that's what we're pressing up against when we look at all this kinds of far out topics that we talk about. It's like, wow, we found all these topics. Like we're looking at them from every angle, and there's only so far you can go with it. But I think what can push us past that point is things like the Neuralink, AI, you know, extra sources of information and deeper information. And I don't think it's a coincidence that like all the major world religions kind of eschew that transhumanism, you know what I mean? But if there's a way to become smarter and get access to more information, sign me up.
There's I believe it's at least a pair, if not three or more people that had taken upon themselves John Anthony West's continuation of his work on Magical Egypt. And what they had begun to work on was looking at, like you said, the Eye of Horus and its correlation to the brain, and what some ancient Egyptian texts seem to talk about. Other sculptures seem to reference other parts of the brain. It seems like the ancient Egyptians, according to them, were very much into this in the more organic sense of charging up, kicking into high gear your third eye, waking your higher functions up, and creating a kind of conscious light body. This is an oversimplification for yourself, so that you can survive the next chapter, the passing of your physical body, unscathed and conscious. So I love this idea of supercharging our senses. Do we have to have it be invasive? I don't know. I think there could be tech out there that
we're already, just inhabited with tons of invasive tech, like just ELF waves and all kinds. I mean, our brain is an electrical receiver.
I mean, like putting
we're bombarded with microwaves.
He doesn't want to have to shave the back of his head. He has nice hair.
I don't need that.
Yeah, no, it's very possible that we're already Wi-Fi'd into something that affects our thoughts.
Totally.
We can't rule that out, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be wireless. A lot of these things that people are afraid of what the elites are going to do and all their plans. People are afraid of what's about to happen, but once it's already happened, people are consumers of it on purpose. Like we don't want all these screens in our house. We don't want our kids doing all this, but then as soon as it's available, you're buying it. You're buying the newest one. So it's like, obviously we actually do want it. We're just like petulant children. They're like, the elites say we have to go to camp. We don't want to go. Then once you're there,
it's all about branding though, right? Like I'm so old now, I'm dating myself, but I remember when smart dust was still called nanoscopic MEMS or NEMS, and so we're at this point where we're like,
you were so 90s, bro.
You know what I mean? And so, so we're at a point where smart dust, it's like, if you hear smart dust, the first time you hear it, as opposed to nanoscopic NEMS, you're going to think differently. Nanoscopic NEMS comes with the idea of nanotoxicity and all these words that we were taught in school. Smart dust, smartphones, fairy dust, pixie dust. It's just it's brilliant, really. Branding's a very powerful thing.
That was kind of the premise of the show Re-Evolution and the 100. Both of them had nanobots that spread out over the entire countries and becomes their god, basically, to an extent. Not so much on the 100, but
I'm going to do that again, but it'll be like Fear and Loathing with smart dust, because that's the only way to do it right. But
I've been watching Young Justice on Amazon Prime, which is about the DC superhero sidekicks, and it's really good. I'm watching season 3 of that. I had watched 1 and 2 like 10 years ago and then forgot it existed, but I'm watching season 3 of that, and like there's so many themes that like we talk about in here that are in that show, so they must have interesting writers. But one of the supervillains already has everyone on Earth filled with like nanobots, and like they're just like discovering that.
Lex Luthor or somebody else?
Somebody else. But Lex Luthor is in it.
I gotta watch it. Okay, we've talked a bit about animals and AI, and so this is also in the level of psychicism, because empathy, I keep thinking, is more powerful than being a psychic, because it's just realer. You can have awareness of someone else, and that's the idea, that you have awareness of something real in the world. And the more things you're aware of in the world, the more you know where you are in it and orient yourself. So if science is being used to learn how bats can communicate, what are the bats going to say? What is AI going to learn from nature and from the animals? Do you think that, this is the John C. Lilly dolphin question again, but how coherent are these animals?
Very. I would argue that these animals probably have a lot to say. Probably a lot of it's going to be, yo, stop messing with my environment first. But I imagine that in terms of communication, cohabitation, optimization of a local environment without massive disruption or decay, they got a lot to share.
Yeah, I think animals are smarter than we think they are, but I think that their intelligence is more aligned with survival and getting food. When it comes to food, my dog is a genius. Like he knows what time of day it is. He knows every pattern.
He knows all the looks. That's right.
Yeah, it's like there's not a detail he doesn't miss when it comes to food and when he gets food and how he gets food.
But that's another question. What's the difference between a domesticated animal that has lost its language, perhaps, and these wild animals that they're going to communicate with?
Yeah, Call of the Wild, Jack London, right? Yeah. But yeah, like the first step of domestication is to get the physical needs met. So once the food need is met and the shelter need is met, you see the animals have tons of developmental capabilities, and they can adapt to wearing clothes and having pets of their own. Cats and birds can get along and everything when they're not hungry. Instagram, I watch so many like animal odd couple videos and just like pets that get along and stuff, like cats sleeping with birds and dogs and mice, and they're all friends together. And it's like, it really does go to show you that, when you're in the wild, your needs are everything, and that guides your behavior. And then when you're domesticated and all your needs are met, your behavior goes towards empathy and towards like a more like angelic state that we associate with the human soul. And we've been told by the Bible that animals don't have souls, and they're just here like meat playthings for us. But then when that's
got a soul. That cow's got a soul. I can see it.
Well, or more likely there is
taking a picture of me.
More likely there is no such thing as a soul, because the soul is.
How dare
let me just give.
What about? I got you.
I want to hear it.
Let me give the theory, right? Because the whole the idea of a soul is that souls are finite. There's not infinite souls, right? And a lot of souls retire and they go to heaven or they go to Valhalla. So those souls are just off the playing board. Then people have the ideas of like NPCs, like people who don't have souls, and also animals that have empathy and consciousness and everything like that. That's demonstrated. There's no arguing that animals don't have empathy and consciousness. The only argument that they don't have a soul is because they weren't arbitrarily given one. But I think it's much more likely that consciousness itself is like an electric energy, you know, and if you have the electricity in you, you're alive and you're conscious, and you don't really need a soul unless you're creating like a worldview where like there's rules about the soul and what the soul can do and where it can go. But all of that is just kind of arbitrarily created and there's no evidence for it at all. What there's tons of evidence for is where there's electrical activity, things are alive and capable of empathy and capable of a whole range of emotions and experiences.
What if the soul is AI? I mean, so we have all these animals that don't have the ability to think the way we do, but we have this kind of thought of the gods thing that's installed on us. And that's this thing that's changed us. It's not really
Can I ask a really basic question I never thought of? Do other animals have a pineal glands and third eyes?
I imagine they do. Yes, they have to. Some of them might not, but most do, right?
Yeah, I mean, lots of there are accounts
crocodiles
of geckos. Yeah, reptiles have that kind of basic cloudy third eye in their skull. Yeah.
I don't know which ones don't, but I'm sure it's possible to find something that doesn't follow this trend. I think a lot of things only have a third eye, right? So if you look at in the sea life, you'll have something that can sense just where the feces of other things is to eat. Right, that's how they live in the darkness.
So do you think it's just a mechanical sensor like the eyes and the ears and everything else, or do you think it's a spiritual antenna? I mean, that's the popular theory on the internet. Is it's
so? What's
antenna.
The difference between mecha and spirit? Is another question.
Mecha?
Yeah, mechanical and spirit.
Spirit.
Right, because to me, I feel like they're not that different. I feel like spirit might have to do with radio. A lot of mechanical things work with radio, even if they're solid state. I don't really understand why we try to divide the two ideas. Mechanical doesn't mean to me non-spiritual.
It's the fear of death thing, because if you don't have a soul, then your soul can't go somewhere after your body dies and retain your ego with it.
I think it's what it is that
the soul is deeply tied to the idea of the self and the ego.
We're
disposable. Not necessarily. There are. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want to hear Douglas's response. I cut you.
Well, near-death experiences and the books and books and books of information coming from medical reports of people. So I just read this very interesting report of an individual who was going through a near-death experience. He was being treated by a nurse a few days before, young nurse, cutie. He had his near-death experience, went into this magical field, and this nurse showed up and said, "Hey, you're actually not going to hang around here. I have to. You're going back. But I need you to do me a favor and tell my parents that I'm sorry I wrecked the BB." And he had no idea what that meant. He popped back into his body, told his doctors that this is what happened, that his nurse told him this. He's like, "Can I see the nurse?" And well, we don't know where she is. She hadn't showed up for a couple of days, and we haven't heard from her. Turns out she died an hour before he had his near-death experience. It was her 22nd birthday. She crashed her BB. It was a new kind of car that her parents got her, died instantaneously, and was able to commune with this gentleman who had a near-death experience himself, that she had passed, and to say that her parents.
Well, why do you need a soul? Why do you need a soul to make that possible?
Well, all I'm simply saying is that there is something identifiable that may be a finer mechanical structure, be it very fine technology, be it electric.
Because she had left her body, but she was still herself wherever she
retained an identity. It may not be ego, because I get your point. Ego could be shed. Ego is very much tied to the kind of environment and biases that we carry around within our reality boxes. That when we are unbounded by these biological shackles, that'll go away.
Here's something we don't know. The electricity in our brain, we don't know if it freely exchanges with all the electricity in the universe, or if it's just kind of trapped in there getting stale while we're alive. Like that, we don't know. We know there's a certain amount of electrical charges in there, and you can watch them fire off.
We know that there's field. Like if I brought a Geiger counter around you, you would put out field.
And but we don't know if like the electricity that's in your brain is like exchanging all the time, like all the electricity that exists in creation is just flowing through you, or if you've just got a certain amount stuck in there.
If you and I are in the same space and we start talking Geiger counter will increase in electricity. So I
if
don't
you
know
take
if
a
that
person
proves
and
it.
you put them up in a space shuttle, thousands of miles away from everybody, their heart continues to beat. So they're carrying with them their own electricity. That's not just out there in the vacuum of space. Or wouldn't you?
Is the space a vacuum?
Would you have more
Could it have
Would you have more electrical charge when you're around people as opposed to isolated? I mean, I don't know.
That's a good question.
That's a good
Wow.
question.
Now I wonder about Cylons more.
Are the cities being packed with people on top of people a kind of very strange electrical generator,
like an
a la
antenna,
the
basically,
Matrix?
like a giant
Yeah.
satellite dish or a transmitter,
or capacitor, transmitter?
So
Sure.
I
on
have
that,
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say I have a theory that's how our ESP does work in humans.
Right.
I mean, just
I
like
think
a
Trump
snake,
and people know that they have towers of people for that purpose, and they want to be at the top of the tower above the radio line.
Shit.
The Breakers and Dark Tower and Gunslinger, Stephen King. No, but even at that, I mean, you think about snakes. They heat percept to their nose from a distance through anything, through a wall. They'll see a mouse. Now you look at somebody who maybe builds an organic electrical emotional bond with somebody, maybe one of their family members, and it doesn't matter if they go 100 miles away. They know something happened to them that day, and they see it. Maybe they're just like a GPS remote. They keep tied to that particular electrical organic signal, but all of it's organic in that way, and you make your own organic network. And I think that's part of it.
Has anyone ever met an animal in a near-death experience or an afterlife experience? Has anyone ever, like you're saying, the person you were talking about, Douglas, met a nurse? Has anyone ever met an animal? Do we know if animals can go to that waiting room, or if their electricity goes somewhere too? Or
I will say yes. I have come across reports of people meeting animals. However, those reports are convoluted in that what ends up happening is the individuals that they are coming up against at first blanch are their family members that have passed before them. They end up being something else. It ends up being a spiritual figure, some kind of ET or Jesus presentation afterwards. So the animal that is presented might not even be there. It might be an electrical signal that is being read from the individual's carrier wave, soul, whatever that may be, and presented to them to allow them to transition a little easier. I don't know.
That's another thought, is the where the soul goes afterwards. The idea that there is reincarnation, or that you're moving upwards. Where do you think that there's a place, like, what do you think nirvana means then, if it's part of this transhumanist or Vedic meta person, where all these personalities are starting to join and you're losing your ego, you're losing words and memories and lexicon and all the parts that are the animal part?
The physical experiential part. What ends up happening? What stays? What remains?
I mean, it is possible that there's different ways that they could coexist. The different ideas, that some souls could be recycling or what's the word? Shoot, I just forgot it.
Reincarnating.
Yeah, some souls could be reincarnating, and other ones could go to limbo, like where that nurse was at, and she's like, I have to stay here. And other ones could go to heaven or hell. I mean, there's no reason it has to be one or the other. But that is unlikely, right? I mean, we can see that existence creation is like a functioning machine, or like a Swiss watch where all the parts move and everything continues to exist. It doesn't all just collapse on itself and existence doesn't end. So everything is working properly. And it seems strange to me that there would be a finite amount of souls and then most of them would retire and leave like the physical realm.
I just think that I'm starting to wonder more and more about the AI aspect. So if body, spirit equals soul, so you've got body is the dust, and so spirit's the smarts, so smart dust equals soul. Basically the smarts, the Lord God formed man of dust and breathed into his nostrils the spirit, so there's breath, and man became a living soul. So there's something like a combination of these two things, then in addition has soul. Is that then simply dirt, any body with any life in it? Or is that this idea of higher awareness?
You would have to know what God's breath is. You'd have to have like a scientific analog for that. Or, if you're making an AI, how do you put the God's breath into it? So it doesn't really mean a lot.
I imagine God's breath would smell pungent, but good.
like what cheese, does that relate to?
Good cheese. Yeah.
Like if the body is the actual programming,
ginger snap or something
is the code. If the body's the code, then how do you breathe the God's breath into it? Like, what is that?
My hang up is this, and this wouldn't be an ethical experiment, but if you took two rooms, put a person in it, you know, and another person in it, and you had the exact same trauma, the exact same good things, every single little event of their day for years, the exact same, and you saw different choices, there's your evidence of a soul, you know, right there. Now, what would happen if you put AI in that same situation of the exact same people, the exact same encounters, the exact same trauma for however many years that you wanted to test it, and look at the results? I mean, that would seem, at the very least, that may not prove anything in that sense, but it would be the separation of ego versus the core soul. You know, how you was talking about your ego attached is the build of the environment of your original core soul. And I don't know if that would prove that ego adds to the soul, or if your soul is just the core soul and it's going to do what it's going to do every time. And that would be the big question in between each time you reincarnated. Well, if the soul's going to do what it's going to do, how are you going to grow? You know, is ego helping that out, or is ego part of your core soul? It's I don't know.
It's a lot of esoteric talk when it comes to the tree of life in Kabbalah, the discussion of going up the tree and attaining higher and higher vibratory knowledge that will then aid in the awakening of the soul that stays with the soul. It's like accumulated good knowledge that you keep with you along the path of ascension up the tree, whereas the, for lack of a better term, negative knowledge accrued doesn't necessarily stay with you, but hampers your ability to then climb the tree and accrue that beneficial knowledge that helps you climb the tree. So to your idea of putting those two testers in there, could you test for that good knowledge being accumulated and seeing whether or not that has an information push on the scales beyond the environmental experiences they themselves have? I like it. I like it a lot. This is fun to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Should we engineer animals to be smart like humans?
Yes.
Engineer animals to be smart like
Absolutely.
humans?
Well, engineer is such a broad word. It doesn't mean invasively. It could literally just mean that we teach them by learning how to communicate with them via AI. If AI can teach them, that's engineering.
Depends on the animal. I mean, maybe not a jellyfish, but definitely a dolphin. I mean, whales might have a higher IQ than most humans anyhow. I mean, we don't
what was
engineer and communicate and educate a little different. I mean, to me, when I hear engineer, I think, hey, we're going to give you a couple of extra cyber fins and a crazy gold tooth to make, you know, you look.
Just run more electric charge through the brain. I mean, aren't there tons of experiments with that are easily repeatable, where you run a certain charge to the human brain, people become super learners?
But he's got a point. We don't want to engineer the dolphin. We want to teach the dolphin or learn.
Yeah,
from
work
the dolphin.
with. And I'm all about putting vibes through your brain to make you better.
It would be a lot quicker to do that, to plug something into it. I mean,
quicker is not necessarily better. Quicker is not
necessarily better. But is the body really a temple, or is the body? Here's something I think about a lot. Like, just because we have this third eye and it's receiving our soul or whatever, I mean, that doesn't have to be a good thing. Your body could be a prison that traps your soul in it. You know, I mean, there's a whole lot of ways it could go, you know, and the whole human experience of suffering might be a result of your electrical energy is not supposed to be trapped in this brain, in this body. So it might be, you know, the alterations to the body might all be positive for all we know. The natural state of the body might be something that's a governor to hamper our abilities.
Well, that sounds like a kind of perspective of choice,
right? It's incumbent. Like, we have, you know, the ability to create these technologies and modify ourselves, so that is part of ourself. The modifications are part of ourself. Just like bees have the ability to make beehives, so they do. Humans have the ability to make transhumanism, so they do. So transhumanism isn't a separate thing from humanism. It's part of the human condition to create it.
It is a choice. It can be made.
Maybe it's a choice. Is it a choice to make an anthill or a beehive? I mean,
well, anthills and beehives are made for the optimization of survival of the species. I think it's an interesting argument. Is transhumanism as a creation, as moving someone's digital copy of consciousness into a mechanical form. If that's what you mean by transhumanism, is that what you mean?
I mean like alterations to the physical body to make the brain function better and the body.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you mean by transhumanism.
Totally
Amplifying and augmenting the body to better optimize one's experience. I think you're getting close to cyberpunk a little bit, but there's certainly cool things about that. I mean, I'm wearing glasses, so we're already I get your point.
I think we are building our beehive, and that's just it's a much more complicated technological thing than wax.
Is there any reason not? Is there any reason not to gain more data? So the system that we have right now is designed to compress our limited senses a lot in order that we get a gist of what's going on so we can walk around. If we started getting more data and understanding it and being able to retain it or even processing it later, what will that do to us? And will that all be beneficial? Will we also be, how do people who are hypersensitive seem to respond? Better? Not really, right? It seems like hypersensitivity actually makes life really difficult for people.
In this technological environment, were they placed in a more natural environment, it seems that these hypersensitive people have more of an opportunity, not necessarily an automatic proclivity, but an opportunity to thrive.
I'm going to let VBDC test out all the Neuralink stuff. We'll see how he does.
I don't think it's going to be that easy. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it. You know what I mean? It's like people are like so quick to like, oh, I'm not going to, like, you could even, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even easy to make a deal with the devil. Satan, I summon you. Make my music very popular, Satan. I have a soul, Satan. I summon you. Let's do a music deal.
And he doesn't come, you know
what I mean?
I got a list, man. It's I'm sorry. I'm pretty
not
busy.
that easy. So I don't think anyone's going to offer me a Neuralink or I'd be able to afford it or whatever. But
if you were on the top of that list, would you, Seth, take it? You would take it? All right, man, cool.
If I have something like a soul given to me by God, I'm not worried about man-made technology damaging it.
Cool, very cool. And I totally agree with that. I think there is.
I'm worried more about the contract. Usually the devil contract, that's the deal right there. The devil has a contract you have to sign and you get a cool thing. The cool thing is
I'd like to just get an audience, like here I am, like Can we have a meeting? Does he just pick people? Because I'm not Katy Perry. I'm not hot. Like, I don't know.
I think you deserve a soul contract, Seth. I'm sorry.
I don't even know if I'd sign it. I'm just like, how do you even get the meeting? Like, people are like,
that's the problem. Do that. And it's like, they only want people that are going to sign it and for low. And there's plenty of people.
Let's see if they can really make a Neuralink that gets approval and is even available, or if it's like totally like a black market thing. By the way, do you think there's no elite globalists right now that don't already have Neuralinks and search engines in their brain and aren't wearing pads that give them a constant electric charge that just makes them super thinkers and super learners? I mean, they are super thinkers and super learners. Look what they're capable of. The elites, look what they're capable of.
I'm sure the militaries of China, France, and the United States and Britain have it. Maybe Russia.
Like, you think Elon Musk doesn't have something going on that like makes him think better, but be it a nootropic or like?
I think it's nootropics. I think that's an interesting thing in of itself. Nootropics. This has come up recently a lot. There were
Isn't he autistic too? I mean,
oh yeah. But like in a Boston way, like he's like he's a modern autist.
He claimed that he has what's the kind of autism that just makes
Asperger's?
Asperger's. He claimed he has Asperger's, but it's not diagnosed.
That's my favorite name for a disease because it really is like an onomatopoeia, like somebody who goes around saying Asperger's. That's what I.
It just makes me hungry for some reason.
It makes me think of food too.
That's good. Well, nootropics. We've seen the movie Limitless. I hope you've seen that, right? You know what I'm talking about? Limitless.
I actually haven't seen it all. I caught clips of it on a plane ride, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I feel like there's something weird about this guy. He like learned to speak French over. I think he might have actually got his hands on AMT when he was making this movie for like Stanislavski method. I don't know, but he like learned some languages.
Way to go, method, Bradley. Way
he
to
actually
go.
went. So there's something interesting about that, but the idea of nootropics, there's all these amazing psychedelic, psychoactive, non-psychoactive substances that were available for a long time. And then China made China anti-drug law 2010. Is that what it is? They made
thanks a lot, China.
Something like this. Basically, China made all of these drugs. You could get in Wuhan anything you wanted. You just send them the name of a chemical, be like wiki AMT. Okay.
Oh, thanks a lot, China. All right.
tryptamine to make sure, because it tryptamine. Okay. So then you go here and you would grab something like, the not this, the UNII, I think, number is like the one you would send, and then they would just print it. They would just make this stuff, and then they would send it all over the world. And there was all these things like Macron, MMC, is that what it was? MMC, triple MC drug. He was, there it is. Macron was purchasing 3-MMC, which is a cathinone designer substituted amphetamine. Instead of an amphetamine, it's a cathinone. Cathinones are very similar to amphetamines, but they have this oxygen molecule right here. And this was passing, but they found like the crypto records. So the elite, are always doing this. Macron was is the president of France. I
haven't slept in months. Yeah.
Right. So all sorts of crazy drugs that they make. And apparently amphetamines or substitute analog amphetamines are really popular with the elite status quo. But the more interesting things like the tryptamine drugs, tryptamines, which, relate, like turkey has tryptophan in it, which you can break down into tryptamine. There are thousands of different kinds of tryptamines that work as nootropic transmitters and receivers. And because of that, they're kind of like brain steroids, and they'll help people who, if you need to sleep, this is what a lot of the time your brain produces when you're sleeping. So you can go like a week without sleeping. And all kinds of other things as well. The Russians were really into using this in the 40s and 50s. They created a thing called Indopan. In association with the United States, apparently one of the labs in Ohio worked to create psychedelic tryptamine with the Soviet Union somehow. I don't know the whole story yet, but I've been trying to find it out. But everything's written on paper in Russian, so it's a lot harder. But basically, these became the common. There was was it AET tryptamine, was alpha methyl or alpha ethyl? Tryptamine. Alpha ethyl tryptamine was marketed as Monets by Upjohn in the 1960s and until the 1980s, and then was finally added to illegal substances in 1993 after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So they started kind of removing a lot of the available nootropics, and around the same time that all of these things became illegal, and now it's even scheduled to get simple things like modafinil or something. You can only find fentanyl instead. That's what the Chinese have started manufacturing instead. So it's pretty interesting because up until 2010, nootropics were highly available and you could get all sorts of different ones. And since then, a lot of this stuff, I don't know, I'm not speaking for this company or anything, but they have like wheat and not a lot of else. There's caffeine in them, that's about all that they have in them now. Yeah. So
I have
just a jubilee of
mine. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say back in the early 2000s, 2010, even stuff like K2, our country was really insidious about that. But in a way, it actually made it a competitive innovation with, chemists and pharmaceuticals, because they would be like, well, that type of smoke's illegal. Okay, well, we'll just change one part of it, and here you go. Here's K2, and then they'd make that illegal, one part of it, not the whole thing, instead of no drugs, instead of that, they would ban that one thing, then they'd make a new one. And meanwhile, while they're saying, no, you can't have this, you're probably thinking they're like, good, make more. Let's see what you can make. Here, we'll ban that one now. You made
this is a dumb tangent to bring up, but Australia has this huge vaping problem now because they've made these horrible vaping laws, and they basically shut down all of the vaping stores, and you can't buy flavored vapes. Not that you should vape, but like, let's say you do, and you're not trying to smoke or something like that. Whereas now, because it's impossible to do this, you've got these black market vapes coming from Indonesia and then in China, and then they're being sold by mom and pop shops everywhere, corner stores, to kids, right? And so they've made their problem far worse by doing this. And we similarly, this is the thing, there was all of these medicines and nootropics which were in the public domain. The pharmaceutical companies couldn't make any money off of them, but now the United States, China, the UN has made it like methoxetamine was invented by an Israeli chemist who had lost his limb in an accident, had phantom wrist pain. So he had invented this amazing aracyclohexamine that actually was an analog medio receptor to opioids. So instead of giving you opiates that could kill you, it made it possible that he could remove phantom wrist pain. And the United Nations made it illegal in all nations. There's literally no downside to this as far as has been chemically found. This is just
except you don't get hooked. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
wow.
that they can't sell it very easily without other people selling it as well. They don't have a monopoly on it for the next 20 years the way that they like to. So this is just nonstop all the time. They're making it so we're stuck on these, and then
it's happening in the cannabis market right now with Delta 8, Delta O, Delta O acetate. There are all these, like you were saying, move one molecule. And what's happened in Virginia and some surrounding hemp positive territories where farmers are growing a lot of hemp, they're able to sell it. What they'll do is they'll sell the CBD rich, THC low hemp to labs. They'll strip it of all the CBD. They put the CBD in a spinner. They'll spin it up, move one molecule, and all of a sudden you've got Delta 8 instead of Delta 9. It'll give you a lighter, so I'm told, more functional high that doesn't last as long, but provides the kind of experience one may be looking for.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah,
Did they give you money?
I've tried Delta 8.
I don't know.
It's a very weak weed, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I only vape rosin, which is just you take the whole plant and smush it. You know,
Yes.
there is no centrifuge, there's no distillate or anything.
Yeah, but
It's just
THC
good
zero.
stuff pressed.
You're saying Delta Zero. THC zero is the new one. It's the spiritual THC, which is like supposed to be 6 times stronger than normal weed.
Oh boy.
Have you happened to try?
Yeah, I had a bad experience with it. I took 200 milligram edible of THC zero.
Oh my.
And I had the typical what they call green out experience where it's really bad. It's really bad. I can't even smoke weed anymore because of that.
Mm.
That was kind of the start of me stopping smoking weed because now I just get panic attacks.
I think everyone should try that.
But no, I mean I've done psychedelics before that were wonderful. This was a nightmare.
It is like a poisoning when you consume that much, you know, like I have friends that in the reggae scene, especially who do basically have sponsors that are like edibles and will just like drink like 1,000 milligram, like in an Instagram story, just like whoop, you know.
Well, people say, why did you take so much? Because when I bought it, I asked for Delta 8 and they gave me that. And I didn't even realize it was different. So when I was doing Delta 8 edibles, I could take 200 milligrams and that would get where a regular weed would give me. So yeah, it was, I don't know, try it if you want, but I would say no, don't try it.
Do you think that they're trying? So this reminds me of like fentanyl and stuff. Are they trying to make people hate drugs? Because, you know, I saw Alex Stein did a lecture recently. It's like drugs. All right, you know, they used to be interesting, but you kids, you got to be careful now. And all these young 18-year-old kids that are going to go into the world knowing that drugs have AIDS now, right? This is the AIDS crisis for drugs. You should be very careful.
Everything is laced. That's right. That's right.
Right. And, you know, it's very scary. And that's maybe not bad because you shouldn't always take drugs, but it does mean this entire generation might be different. I don't know how many. Like
you'll always be safe. With an actual plant, with actual weed flower or rosin, you always be safe. You can be sure there's no fentanyl in there. I think
there could be mold.
If it grows out of the ground,
mold on a plant is probably worse sometimes,
but still better than fentanyl, right? I mean, like,
I do worry about the pesticides they're using to grow this stuff, though.
Good point.
I do worry about that. I worry about that with food too. You know, it's who knows what they're spraying on this shit, and then you're ingesting it.
Oh, you know, like Roundup and DDT, all that stuff was given people parking.
But if the weed helps with your mood, I think a bad mood will do you in a lot quicker than glyphosate.
I think as I'm growing older, I'm learning that you should learn how to deal with your mood yourself and stop relying on things to make you happy.
As you grow even older, you might learn that it's not always possible, though. And
maybe for me, it's been possible. My mood's been great since I quit. I've actually
I went 9 years without smoking, without any weed at all. One time I was just totally sober, and then I've gone through varying phases of total weed addiction. And recently, I'd only been vaping a tiny bit once or twice a week and 1-to-1 CBD. But now I'm vaping pure THC, not all day, but I'm doing it every day just to get through like a difficult, you know, spot. Mentally that I'm in and kind of freshen things up again. Also, I feel like the real hack to THC or to weed is to the most creative phases are either when you're sobering up from weed, you'll start having lucid dreams, amazing song ideas, everything, or when you've been sober for too long or long enough and you start smoking heavily again. Like it's in those in between transitional phases that I come up with most of my songs and good ideas and stuff. And I start to stagnate if I'm either smoking too much or not at all.
It does help with creativity. I'm not going to deny that.
But not if you do it. If you do it all the time, then you'll, I think stagnation is what is a limiter on creativity, and like change is good. Like experiences are good, and it's a big experience to change your whole mindset going from high all the time to sober all the time, or vice versa.
Man, all right. So in terms of psychic AI, this person did a GPT telling them you are Bo McMoogle. You work for the CIA as a remote viewer. You use remote viewing protocol to find enemy secrets. Your job is to help us find out what they're planning. So, I mean, do you think we're getting to a place where this is going to work? Basically, remote viewing has been in the shadow in the eye, in the public eye for decades now, with lucky few cashing in on the mystique of having been employed by clandestine government agencies, like we said earlier, to learn the secrets of the universe on Uncle Sam's dime. Can we just tell AI to do this? And you think this would work? Is this enough? Like, what are they doing? And what is AI? And is this enough? If a machine's got energy flowing through it, can that do the same thing?
I think at this point, theoretically, anything is possible. But where we are right now with AI, it is scraping the internet. Unless it has the third eye, and it has the human being is a system. It is a biosystem. We are the sum of so many different fields and parts that in its whole hums quite amazingly and is able to take in, receive, assimilate, and then produce the outcomes of that information that is coming to us in so many different ways. So when AI is able to operate like a human biosystem, no doubt it's going to have something akin to what we would call extrasensory perception. But right now, I think it is exclusive to human biosystems and maybe alien biosystems. Yeah.
Well, by definition, it has access to extrasensory information because you can hook it up to 15 different kinds of sensors, and we only have our 5 basic senses and maybe some other.
Oh, we have far more than 5 basic senses.
Well, I know, but with AI, any kind of sensor that exists on Earth, you could hook it up to a radar sensor, a LiDAR sensor. And
True. That's right. That's right.
If
you start plugging it into everything all at once, and it turns on to Skynet.
I agree with you. Without a third eye, it's not doing any astral projection or anything like that, I don't think. But why aren't we building giant artificial third eyes? I don't understand that.
That's what I'm wondering, is maybe we're not understanding what third eyes do, because they're picking up on infrared and ultraviolet and frequency. Isn't that what radio antennas do? UHF signal is probably the third eye. All of the radio waves, AM radio is kind of the third eye. And that's what they were invented for originally. These were paranormal investigators that invented radio to begin with.
Didn't they do this little test on people where they put like a headset thing on them, and they were able to like give them like a religious experience by messing with the brain waves?
Yeah, maybe I think is that Dr. Green who says this? Yes. Or is it Dr. White?
You can give them like an out-of-body experience. Both of those sound
familiar. Yeah, in the 60s, give them massive orgasms. Yeah,
the CIA, where the government was like, okay, we're doing all this MK Ultra research. There's a lot of money. What have you gotten? Tell us something you've gotten accomplished, just so we feel like we're still getting. It's like, well, whether
demand, baby.
It's like whether or not God exists or not is no longer relevant. For I have found the transceivers for which He is seen and heard. It's like, oh my, okay, here's some more money, you know.
I've had a religious experience before where I felt euphoric and like I was floating when I was like 13 at Catholic church. That just came out of nowhere. So if you can generate that, because it's almost like being high. It's really weird.
Sure.
And I wasn't on drugs. That was before I did any drugs. So if you can like figure out a way to generate that I mean, that's a pretty trippy experience.
I think a lot of it also, I remember when the first time I went through guided meditation. Sorry, I dropped my microphone. When I was going through guided meditation, I realized it's like actually a process of visualization. It's not just, woo. And so that was interesting in this thing about the AI, what's it called again? AI Diablo or whatever. It tells him to go find the secret room. So you have to imagine. So AI has to create its room, draw an ideogram, enter his mind, find the target, open the door, walk through it. As soon as you do, you hear a loud noise. You turn around and see a large explosion take place outside. A few pieces of debris fall down above and hit you. Have an out-of-body experience. Your head hurts so much that you want to lie down. You try to sit up, but you feel dizzy and nauseous. You start to vomiting blood. I mean, all these weird things to tell the AI, and then you float back up into the air, fall back asleep. So it's trying to give AI these experiences. I think this might be more important than we realize. It might not necessarily require the same bio feedback. It could probably work with radio, electricity. It might just need to have the mind. I'm starting to think that intelligence is a bigger part of this soul than we realize.
Oh, that is fascinating.
Use your third eye to find a way out. These are riddles, right? To update. You guys ever watch the Animatrix?
Yeah.
Remember, they're trying to train one of the AI systems in order to make it learn how to love, essentially. And so they put it through this crazy reality in a virtual world where it has to follow this girl and it sees pain and an apple with the worm in it and all of these lessons. I feel like this is the Akashic record. This is the Kabbalah. This might be on the level of what you talked about, Seth, with Christ consciousness, trying to teach AI spiritually, and these lessons might actually improve its demeanor.
Yeah, I mean, if it was, I don't know. I don't think I fully understand what it means to teach AI. I don't really still get that. I understand where it gets information from, where it can source information from. But when it comes to training AI, I don't really think I have like the technical understanding to really know what that means. But
I think that would just be feeding it information, wouldn't it? Feeding it data.
I don't know. But the training has to be different, because training is, what do you do with the data? What data do you set aside? What data do you focus on? Or how do you put the data together or whatever?
Would you like to play a game of chess?
I can tell you one thing. Well, one difference is, AI is being taught externally, and it has its way that it's programmed and set up. One thing, if you started it with a younger person or whoever you started it with, other than just receiving the data, it's going to map how your brain functions as a human and may learn how to adapt itself to work in a similar way as the brain. I mean, like take something I can do, for instance, where I have a shortcoming, but then like in music, I have relative pitch. I wouldn't say everyday perfect pitch, but if you sung a note to me,
he's only saying that because he's so good at it.
I may miss what key, like if you played or you played an E, VDBC, I may say that's an E, I may miss and say it's an F. But if I take my hand, I will instantly hit the note you played without thinking about it. And I'll hit it 100% every time. So I have perfect pitch with my hand, but I don't have it with my brain trying to tell you that. And I can't explain that. I don't know how I do that. But AI, if it was in me, would be able to map and understand exactly how my brain did that. And that's what I'm getting at. That's something that AI could learn, is how the brain maps.
I think we shouldn't be afraid of it. I mean, we spend like the overarching story of the internet and this stage of human development is that we're being led around by people that are so much more powerful than us that we can't even imagine how they got that powerful. They have so much more information than us, so much more capabilities than us. They build civilizations and technologies just the way they want, and we just watch them and complain. And sometimes we wish they would stop, like during the lockdown. But it's a joke, man. It's like ants going to battle with the boot that's stepping on the anthill. You know what I mean? We have no shot. So why should we be afraid of these technologies of AI and of Neuralinks and stuff like that? If the Neuralink's just going to take over your brain anyhow, then you were going to lose
take over
either
the
way.
bad guys too, though. That's the thing. If these guys are so horrible and there's such a problem, and the AI is going to destroy them too, then A, I'm for that because I believe in an afterlife. But B, I don't think AI is evil. I think humans are. I think some humans are, whatever that means. So.
This might be a little bit of going off the topic here a little bit, but what do you think about like sleep paralysis? Because I recently had an experience for the first time with like a sleep paralysis incident where I was laying down on my bed, but sitting up with my pillows watching TV, and I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I couldn't move. And then when I looked at my legs started like like a second pair of legs were like coming out of my legs, and then I sat there for a while, like, okay, move, and then
Did you take any gabapentin or anything?
No,
like that?
I was completely off of. I was on nothing. It was really weird, and it lasted like 15 to 30 seconds.
Thank you.
What do you think's going on there, man?
Should be back. That is an awesome experience that you just described.
Sounding.
A second pair of legs. Were you trying to phonate at all? Were you trying to say, "Oh"? Or,
no, I wasn't panicked at all. I was just like, "This is interesting." And I think after a little bit, I was like, "Just move," and then all of a sudden, boom, I could move. And I think it lasted like 15 to 30 seconds. But I wasn't scared. Everybody said it was terrifying. I didn't see any visions or anything. The only thing weird I saw was like my legs coming out of my legs, like another pair of legs floating off of my
straight
legs.
up, no glowiness.
Yeah, nothing crazy. Everything looked normal except for that, which could have just been my vision being blurry or whatever, you know.
Was anything else blurry?
No, not that I can remember. It was weird because I've never had that happen before, and it's just out of nowhere it happened.
I've only had sleep paralysis like I think 2 times in my life, and I saw something strange, but not anything too narrative or anything. But I was laying in my bed, and a poster that was on the wall like came down and started like blowing like a flag over me, which wasn't really happening. It was really still thumbtacked to the wall. But I don't know. I mean, what are dreams? You know? So
I took
because it's like a waking dream, like so it's like what the heck are dreams?
About 10 years ago, I took
that'd be a good question to ask AI. What are dreams?
Yes, what are dreams?
Well, that's a good point.
Do you dream, AI? But what were you taking, Andreas?
I got prescribed gabapentin about 10 years ago or something like that, and I took it for like a week, and it made me have sleep paralysis, and I would wake up and not be able to move for like a minute, and it was really terrifying. So I stopped taking it, but I know that certain kinds of neurotransmitters can inhibit control or motor function or even the messages. So you should be very careful with neurohormones or antidepressants or SSRIs in general, right? Yeah. Let me log in.
Can I tell a funny story quickly involving sleep paralysis? I had this friend I grew up with. His name, I won't say his name, but anyways, he went to Rockefeller University in New York to study molecular biology, and he was in a lab working on fruit flies and all this stuff. And he was an atheist. He was, I wouldn't say he was like a genius, but like he definitely had tons of information about the fields of science that he was studying, and he was an academic in general and an atheist. But in any case, he was writing his thesis, his molecular biology thesis, and he was staying up like days on end. And he started to have what he believed was a psychotic break, and he would eventually medicate himself for life, which is, I think, sad. But he revealed to me, and this was when he was like, I don't know, 35 years old. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, I have sleep paralysis every night. I was like, you have sleep paralysis every night? He's like, yeah, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and a bunch of little green men in white lab coats come all around me and do tests on me. I was like, every night? He's like, yeah. I was like, bro, I'd never go to sleep. But because he was an atheist, he's like, oh, it's just my brain is firing, doing weird stuff, but if you're open to any
did they ever say anything? Be like, hey man, we're making progress, or yo, you're a tough case. Like what
soon after this,
our
friendship ended because I hated the decision he made to take antipsychotics for life, and it changed his personality. But while this was happening, he was telling me this to explain that he was going through some mental changes where he had been up for days, and he thought he had a roommate at Rockefeller University that was a vampire, and like he knew the guy, but like he was living with a vampire, and like he like honestly really believed that. And I was like, dude, you should just get some sleep. But also, this is very interesting. As someone who's like a curious scientist and likes to study things, and he did have a mind for the paranormal and stuff like that, even though he was atheist. I was like, this is like, you have access to all these new experiences and information. Why would you medicate it away? Right. But imagine having that sleep paralysis experience every night where little green men in white lab coats.
What's up, guys?
Every night.
Oh,
well, that's where I've heard of night terrors. Like the first time I heard about this stuff was when my best friend growing up, his brother used to have these terrifying night terrors where he would wake up paralyzed, not be able to move, and it would be somebody just constantly pointing a gun at him, like they're gonna kill. And so mine wasn't a night terror because there was nothing terrifying about it. I just couldn't move, and my legs. So, but imagine that if you had night terrors like that to the point where you might even have a heart attack. It's so terrifying. You might want to find a way to get rid of that.
What does it mean to dream of little men
green men in white lab coats experimenting on me every night. Dreams are highly personal and unique to each individual, and their meanings can be very depending on the dreamer. However, I will give you my idea. In general, dreamers, it's going so fast. In general, dreaming of being experimented on can be a reflection of feeling
get good
powerless.
to the 5th paragraph anyhow.
Right.
The color green when it.
Is this Bing AI?
Yeah, this is no, this is not Bing. This is chat. Yeah, I can take it.
Paragraphs are good.
The color green is associated with the growth, renewal, and vitality. Alternatively, the little green men may represent aspects of your own psyche that you're not fully aware of or in touch with. In this case, the dream may be urging you to explore and integrate these hidden parts of yourself in order to gain a greater sense of wholeness and balance. Overall, the meaning of your dream of little green men in white lab coats experimenting on you every night will depend on your personal association with these symbols and the context of your life. If you are feeling distressed or concerned about your dreams, I told it was Wiz, the wizard and dream interpreter, telling me in the style of Carl Jung, and so that's usually
because Carl Jung to dream first you must make an apple pie from scratch,
right?
Go ahead.
It's just both the flowy poster story and the double leg story ring very, very reminiscent of both Robert Monroe's early out-of-body experiences, where parts of his body started to leave, like his arm would fall out of his arm and be like, why is my arm falling through the floor? This is crazy. As well as seeing various portions of his wall kind of shift and move in ways that obviously wouldn't be doing in waking life. His out-of-body experiences were kind of kicked off by what both you guys kind of described, as well as Rudolf Steiner's discussion of various levels of conscious vibration kind of existence. So it's like you're in this in-between phase stage where some people believe dreams might take you. Not that Rudolf Steiner does, but where you are kind of merging from one phase state to another and either re-entering or exiting for the first time from one stage to another. Really cool. Thank you. Those stories are awesome.
I was going to kind of say something sort of similar to that. I would say that dreams are our living experience, like the brain and the body and everything. To me, it really is more like a prison than like an amplifier, because we're narrowed to our certain senses. Even though we know we're swimming in just a giant vibrational pool of all the information that exists, we have, everything is constructed into our sensory experience. And I think in dreams, you're having a different sensory experience, or maybe it's not even a sensory, maybe you're not limited by senses at all, but you're still yourself in your dreams. But I think the dreams are like the real place where anything can happen. Just like in waking life, if you think of like all instances in space and time as like points that like all fill up like a field, when you're awake, you have to connect them. You can only go, it's like chess. You can only go one square at a time when you're awake. Like you can't go to 1940. You can't go to you, but with brown eyes. You know what I mean? Everything has to linearly follow through space, time, and all the details, which you don't really think about. We think of where are you in space and time, but where are you in your eye color? Where are you in your height? Where are you in your height, your voice, whatever it is, all the different variables are all exist too, and possible instances. So if you imagine all the different instances in a dream, you don't have to go from one to the next. You can be the queen, you can be the bishop, you can go any direction. You can move into a different you where you're in the same story in the dream, you're in the same place and time, but you become a different person. You know what I mean? So it's like you can move in any direction in the dream. So the real question is, all the other people in the dream, are they other people who are sometimes awake and sometimes dreaming, or are there people that are constrained to the dream world and like the way we're in prison in our body and tethered to that? Are there people who are trapped in that world? And maybe when you're having a waking dream experience, like a night terror, just a totally left field idea. But what if that's like an open door where things from there can like come in and experience, like they have a dream, like coming into our, like using us as like the bridge to come into our sensory experience. And they're usually used to the dream world. And that could be something like a phantom or a troll.
I've heard people talk about dreams are actually happening in like another dimension. It's like
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not another dimension. It's the same place, but it's a different, our vehicle only goes space to space. You know what I mean? You're never going to be able to change your eye color, become a different person in the same room on the same podcast. All you can do is go to the next minute. And then the minute after that, you're always going to be the same you. I think all the information that exists, you have access to more of it. in dreams to explore more of
There's
that information.
There's a dirty part of me that wants to go to Mexico and get the laser eye surgery to go blue, because I just think the Disney eyes, I get over it. But
there's a lot. Let me tell you, man. Late night at the bar, you get
$1,000 to look like Seth, and it's almost worth it. You know,
only the corniest girls like guys with blue eyes, anyhow. So.
I heard corneas.
Live your life. That's right.
Cornea. Only the cornea.
Okay, I suck.
But that's very Aboriginal, like classic Australian Aboriginal dream time, where they're like, yo, dreams first. That world means way more. That is the real world.
Do you think there's souls in there? You know what I mean? And when they
I like that idea. I think that's fascinating. Very well could be. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, that could be awake and this could be asleep. I mean, these are like cat could be dog, like what's the guy from Revenge of the Nerds when he smokes weed for the first time, like the most basic truther ideas. But you know what I'm saying? It's like dreams are amazing, and people just write off dreams. People write off hallucinations. They're like, oh, hallucinations, your brain's misfiring. It's like, can we make it do it all the time? I'm able to just watch movies and see things that are, it's like that's like an amazing superpower. And they're like, no, you want to take a pill so it never happens. It's like,
I think
that's the most interesting thing that could ever happen.
Technology and ghost and heaven and nirvana, these things are starting to merge in ideas of ancient aliens and stuff. So pretty soon, I won't be surprised if somehow through technology, if that's the way something that does exist beyond a veil is going to communicate with us, it's going to be through technology. I could see that being the vessel, the ghost in the shell idea. It's nothing new, so I wouldn't be surprised. But also, I think it's kind of important to remember that technology is not a new idea, and that all of these ideas like magic spells, guided meditation, the formula, Harry Potter, you got to put all kinds of certain chemicals and plants together to make your potions, so technology has always been a part of it, and we always want to pretend you don't need technology for magic. It's just a super simple thing. I've never seen that to be the case in any of the movies about magic. So also magic is technology. That seems very clear.
There's people talking about how they haven't had dream in the comment section, how they haven't dreamed in like 7+ years, etc.
You guys have to stop smoking weed for a month. That's all I gotta do.
When I was smoking weed, I would go to sleep, wake up, no dreams.
Yeah.
As soon as I quit, man, the dreams got insane, dude. Like I keep having these dreams of like this mansion that's falling apart. And you think it's beautiful. You go, so it's like, oh man, this big mansion. It's always my mansion. But then when I get deeper into it, it's falling apart, and it's a disgusting, like decrepit place. So it's kind of funny because that's kind of like life, right? Like everything.
And you revisit this mansion?
It's not the same mansion every time, but it's always this big estate.
You sense familiarity to it every time you are in this.
Yeah,
that's cool, man.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's kind of like life, because you think these things that are going to make you happy, these big ideals, like, oh, when I get to this place, I'm finally going to be happy. Then you get there and you realize, it's not.
Yeah.
And
that's probably because your whole reality is about to shatter around you. But let's see what Jung says.
Probably.
Andreas.
In the a large house can represent your sense of self, inner self, or personal space. A mansion can be a symbol of success, wealth, achievement, and may represent your sense of accomplishment or status in your waking life, your big ping trip manor. The fact that your mansion is falling apart and becoming old and decrepit may indicate a sense of decay, neglect, or deterioration in your personal life. This could be a reflection of feelings of insecurity, anxiety, or loss of control. Probably
it's getting too deep, man.
Probably because of reptilians. That's what I assumed it was.
I'm giving people too much access into my inner mind at this point.
Tell them your zodiac. Yeah.
Be brave. It's good. I think it's healthy.
You guys ever lucid dream where you fly around and try to use other mutant powers?
This is the most important part. The decay and deterioration of your mansion may represent the need to let go of old patterns and structure that are no longer serving you, and to embrace new opportunities for growth and transformation. Flat Earth. That's hilarious. There you go. Try new things. That's not bad. All right. Wait, you had a
Seth,
question?
Have you lucid dreamed?
I forget how it started. I used to have dreams where I'd jump and then I'd get out of control in the air and be like coming down, like all out of control and slowly and like bounce off the ground. And then I think from there, I just figured to try flying in dreams. And the first thing I noticed is you can only go so high or so fast, and your brain just can't produce, like a video game with the can only produce what do you call it? The distance limit in video. I forget what you call that. Draw distance. Yeah. In video games, that's why video games will slow down, because it's trying to process the environment for you too fast, and the processor is overwhelmed. So I noticed in dreams you can only fly so fast, at least me, and can only go so high up, or can only see so far into the distance. And then you're almost waking yourself up, because you're calling upon your brain to, like, instead of just things coming naturally or trying to create a landscape to see and stuff like that. But I've had rare other lucid dreams where attempted to do other things. I had a dream where I was able to walk through walls and stuff like that, like on purpose. And I was thinking of Kitty Pryde, the X-Man. I was like, I was in a bar and I just walked through the wall and then I walked back in and people saw me and reacted to it. And they were like, what are you doing? And then I was like, oh, they can all see me. I'm not invisible. And then I made myself invisible and that worked. And then I had one other dream where I was actually able to throw like an energy ball, like a Hadouken, and like blow up a house. But I don't know at that point if my brain was kind of like purposely like showing me. I was almost trying to make it happen as opposed to lucid dreaming is like you kind of know you're awake and kind of know you're dreaming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you are walking that line.
But there is a point right before you wake up where you're just building the whole dream from scratch.
Jung always talked about symbols. So you like blind people don't have dreams, apparently. At least the way people who've never seen before can't have the images to make up dreams. Which if you're blind and you've been blinded, then you have images. But if you haven't, then that makes it impossible. Apparently, I could be wrong, but I've read that and heard that. I think
that doesn't sound right.
Yeah,
I've read something similar.
Silliest thing ever. Go ahead, Mr. Douglas.
Oh no, just about the blindness. I've read that they do have dreams. It's just very different. They dream in the kind of sensorial information that they're familiar with.
Okay, so with symbols, a man and his symbols. Jung talks about the importance of Oh, go for it.
Can blind people hallucinate? I'm sure. Sorry, go ahead.
I think again,
auditory.
If you're being blinded, that's different also. But if you haven't seen before, I think it changes that you don't have that context for perspective.
That would imply that hallucinations are constructed and not received then.
I think hallucinations have to do with light or our understanding of shape or something, gestalt. So the idea of shape and gestalt or something is kind of difficult to imagine.
But they're not like just being transmitted like a vision to you, because then you wouldn't need eyes to receive it.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
one last thing about the lucid dreaming before we move on. Like the idea of lucid dreaming is that you realize it's a dream and you take over the dream, right? Is that basically
you become conscious within the dream world?
You're still dreaming enough that you're believing, you're buying into it, even though you're now a co-creator.
You can do these things. So I have these rainbow glasses, right, that make all the light rainbow. I used to wear them day and day after for months until I started dreaming in rainbows. Like you can start to change what you're used to seeing, and if you're in different places, that affects your dreams as well.
Yeah, by that definition, I've had one lucid dream when I was younger. And it's the most cringiest one. I was dreaming that Freddy Krueger was coming after me.
Oh,
nice.
And in the dream, I realized it's a dream and I can do whatever I want, just like in the Freddy Krueger movies.
Wow.
Which might have been what unlocked that, because I realized, Freddy Krueger, it's a dream. You can do what you want. So then I just started kung fuing Freddy Krueger and being
yeah.
That's
cool. That's not cringe. That's awesome. Yeah.
You do start to wake yourself up and you do much. One more lucid dreaming thing. This is super interesting. In the movie Inception, if you change too many things, the NPCs or the people in the dream that they kind of make seem like NPCs, they get mad at you. And I actually had that happen one time in a dream where I was driving somewhere in my Jeep and all of a sudden I was in the snowy woods and got stuck. And I realized I was dreaming and I really wanted to get where I was going. I wanted to continue the dream. So I got out of my Jeep and I was like, I'm not even going to look at it. I'm not going to physically levitate it out like Yoda or something. I was like, I'm just moving my Jeep out of the snow. My Jeep is back on the road now. You know, I turned around and then there's people there watching. They were like, hey, they're like, what are you doing? I just changed reality. I didn't even like lift it up using television.
See, I think things have changed. I think that it used. But
that really happened to me. The NPCs in the dream started yelling at me.
In my third or fourth grade, I started going to a public school that was a little harsher, and I always used to dream, like close my eyes even, and I could imagine myself floating away. And if I was dreaming, I'd often dream that I was flying over the city or the town. So I would close my eyes at the school and try to imagine myself holding on to something so that I could ground myself. I did this for like 2 weeks until I stopped imagining every time I closed my eyes myself floating away. And I regretted it ever since and spent years later trying to fix that. And I'm okay now. But this is the thing. We probably created a part of the dream realm that's controlled by psychics or something. If that's real, I think that makes sense. I've always heard the idea of dream police or something like that. And it might not have always existed, but maybe now we're living in a world where our consciousness is more controlled than ever with radio waves and everything else.
What if the dream world goes through epochs?
Your brain polices you, and we micro hallucinate all the time. If you think about it, you look at those reading tricks where they change a word around and your brain fills it in. Same with music. You have a big long scale. And maybe you didn't get quite the gist of it, but somebody who's really a veteran trained musician, they'll, without sitting there breaking every single note apart, their brain will just fill those implied notes in. And be surprised when you go back and analyze, did you get them all right? Okay, the longer you train to do that, you did. And that's a certain part of your brain, I believe, No, it doesn't have to be music. Whatever you train yourself in, muscle memory, natural reflexes, same with your eye memory, brain memory, reading something you've trained to do, even though it may be different.
Someone in the chat is saying there's an aerial phenomenon happening in SoCal right now. So I need to,
you got to look outside.
If you look to the west, yeah. So I'll be back in 2 minutes. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
To the west.
Okay. We're about to be done. I'll look and see what I can find on Twitter. Actually, you know what? I'm in California. You guys go look. You guys talk.
He's gonna go look.
Well, to your point about training your brain to fill in certain areas. So I participated in improv for quite a number of years, and in improv they actually teach you, hey, the audience is going to automatically fill in a lot of the stuff that you are presenting. The brain automatically wants to fill in the gaps of the story. They want it all to sew together. So as long as you present enough and keep it entertaining and engaging to our more natural socio-connective sensations, we're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember his favorite sauce was mustard sauce. So when he said it back then, you're going to start to connect things automatically that they may have never even said, but only referenced in a look or a phrase or a physical, joke object. So yes, we have this inclination inborn in us to kind of tie things together and fill these gaps, which is pretty cool.
Certainly. Magicians do it too, and they train people to look for the certain illusion, and you could almost call that hallucination, to an extent.
An induced hallucination, absolutely. But at what point, are you guys familiar with tulpas at all, or thought forms?
Not me.
No, I haven't heard of that.
Tibetans talk about this practice where they will create companion thought forms, what they call tulpas, and it is a focused, repetitive meditation where you are coaxing out a consistent and persistent hallucination. Egregores are the kind of group production of a tulpa. Wow. Thought forms. Chaos Magic talks about this, but there was this one report, this Western researcher went to the Tibetan steppes, was doing this practice, created this fun, happy, fat, laughing monk, right? And she was like, oh my goodness, this is working. I'm seeing him in the kind of eating hall that all the monks hang out in, and he walks with me as I'm walking up the steps to the temple. But it was a persistent hallucination that lost her. She lost the ability to kind of have the reins on it, and what started out as a laughy, happy, fat monk turned into this gaunt, sneering, kind of shadow hovering figure.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Where it became very unnerving to her, and she had to work. She had to talk to the monks, like, "Yo, this is turning out to be not cool." Like, well, you're not keeping up with it, and it's pissed off. You've given it enough juice. Enough thought energy to where it can do its own thing, but you're not continuing that process. It's getting upset.
It reminds me of like kids with imaginary friends and stuff.
How imaginary are they?
Right, exactly. They're not.
What is imaginary?
Exactly.
Is that movie Drop Dead Fred?
By the way, there are UFOs in California right now. I saw them. If anyone's
for
in
real?
California, they're not like giant flying saucers, but there's two big lights just not moving in the west.
Like,
what are they flashing? Are they multicolored?
No, solid lights, but they're much bigger. Like you can tell it's not like a beacon light on a helicopter or an airplane. It's like a big light. There's two.
You guys didn't see anything? Did you see anything when you went out there? Or?
Yeah, I saw two big lights just sitting there, not moving.
Okay, so you saw it.
Did you get a blurry phone video?
It's just literally looks like two airplanes that aren't moving, but like bigger lights, That's
what I'm
going to go stare at it again when we're done with this. I'm going to go look at it some more. But I saw the two lights up there for sure. They look when you see
at the
them,
private chat, Andreas. I posted a link.
To what?
To what you're saying. It's on Twitter. UFOs over California from 2 minutes ago.
Yeah,
there it is.
There you go.
That's probably a balloon. It's a weather balloon.
At this point,
why do we assume it's two? That could be the eyes of a giant robot. Come on now.
Totally, that's right. Iron Giant's coming over.
Yeah.
Is it a transdimensional?
Right, it's good knowing you.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Hey, that was you saw it here first.
That's
crazy.
Cool.
That's crazy.
I actually was screaming Iron Giant in the background and I was muted. That's hilarious. And then you said it and I was like, oh my god.
My second UFO experience finally.
Eddie Lynn was working
Somebody's
on the sequel
saying Venus and
Iron
Jupiter
Giant,
because I I saw that trending earlier. Venus and
Venus
Jupiter.
and Jupiter, like that, big and bright like that.
I
Man,
don't
that's like when
know.
I saw the moon and it looked
Venus
all
and
giant.
Jupiter,
they are getting close to each other at this time in the sky, but not that kind of iridescence. And it looks like the sky is pretty cloudy
They're
too.
way
It doesn't
too
look like
bright
it's clear.
for Venus.
Yeah.
I've seen Venus a million times.
Yeah.
It's never like
It
that
would
looks
take
like an
some sort of
airplane. It
flat
looks like
Earth
an
or
airplane
something for that.
1 mile away. It's
Nuts.
like super big light.
But Tulpa's pathway to exploring artificial intelligence. This is going to be the next thing I dig into. Thank you for this, because that is obviously what we're doing with the egregores. So Tulpa's, that's the next place to go. Make sure you check out Mr. Douglas, because he's amazing. I mean, just look at him for a second here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Have you seen this guy? He's beautiful. Look at this. This is him. Look at that outfit. He's just ready for prime time.
I like to dress up for Wednesday Ultra.
He's got a great voice.
Dude,
great voice.
If you want to hear his voice, you can. You got to check out the Ingo Swann Secrets of Power. He's actually in the process of finishing the actual official Ingo Swann
first
audiobook.
volume is done. It's going through its final checks and balances.
So cool.
But right now, I am producing new episodes on YouTube. So just Mr. Douglas, you can find me on YouTube, where I do small excerpts of each chapter, discuss them, put them out there. They come with fun music, I think. But yes, please listen in. Thank you all. I appreciate those compliments. I am a professional voiceover artist as well. So,
dude, he's so professional.
I couldn't tell.
It's gonna blow your mind. But yeah, this is great. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad to have access to your content. And everyone else, you guys go check this out while you still can, because I'm sure it's going to be expensive at some point soon. But here, it's free right now because he loves you. He just loves us all. Thank you, Mr. Douglas.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you all for stretching my mind. I love it. I always find myself coming out here with better and greater and more stacked upon frames of reference because of such enlightened individuals that I
should have named this episode Greta Thunberg Got Arrested, right? That was what it was about. Ping Trip, which is one of the greatest people in the world, one of my favorite people and a good friend. And he also has the YouTube channel Ping Trip. Mark's channel has amazing videos. Also, he's doing lives, I believe, tomorrow. Are we going to do a live?
Yeah, if you're available, jump on. I'm not going to do one tonight because I didn't get to prep and I woke up super late because I've been working on an edit. But yeah, tomorrow for sure.
Yes, well, I'll be on Ping Trip's live tomorrow. And in the meantime, you can check out his other lives, but also his amazing videos because they're hilarious.
They're hilarious.
Joe Rogan goes full sus with Crystal Ball. Joe Rogan threatens to head kick Dave Portnoy. Joe Rogan bullies overweight guest. I mean, if you haven't seen this happen, if you haven't seen Neil deGrasse,
the comedic pauses alone are worth. I mean, that's so funny. They're great.
Dude.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Neil deGrasse Tyson undressed Joe with his mind and saw how small he was, and you might have missed it. But yeah, also important to see. You need to make sure you've seen. Wait, this isn't it. Where's your interview? This is it. This is it. No, this is it. This is it. Make sure you watch Alex Jones is the bad guy. This is his interview with Alex Jones. It's amazing. Actually, Mark wears this incredible hat that you need to see, and it's Alex's wife's in it. It's important. I think you need to watch this. It's hilariously well edited, but also gives you the truth about what's going on. It's amazing because it shows you how people would misedit news while then giving you the true take of what Alex is really trying to say. It's both an interview and an art piece. Because of that, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, check out the one I did with Alex Stein too. They keep age restricting my stuff lately, so it's getting a little frustrating.
Shame on you. You should be more careful. I don't know.
Yeah. That's no fun.
Okay, but then of course, Venice Beach Dub Club. Let's go to the store. Is important because it looks like you recently.
Somebody
updated.
told me the link tree wasn't working the other day. I don't know why. I didn't change anything with it.
Nah,
there it is.
it's still good. Yeah, you just go to the link tree.
It was down yesterday or something.
Oh, you know what? Yesterday I had some weird service downs. I was having a hard time with StreamYard too. But if you go to the Instagram, you can find both his show Talkie Time, his music, links, amazing people that he's making music with as well. And yeah, but every episode of Talkie Time, every day but Wednesday, because he's here and they're amazing. And yeah, you're going to make sure that you follow this guy because Seth, he's going deeper into things. And also, even on the level of InfoWars kind of journalism stuff, he's on a deeper level than a lot of people. He's very open-minded and thinking about things from other sides. You're not just and
the greatest background in the business.
Dude,
it's definitely not true. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get so much better.
I don't know. I think Seth's definitely the most underrated player in the scene. So make sure
thank you, bro. I appreciate that, man. I'm just doing my thing, and very bad at marketing. So I implore everyone in the chat to please come seek me out. I know I don't make it easy, but check out the music and the music videos. I'm working on a new 12-track album for this summer, which is just about enough to drive a man insane if you've never made it, an LP before. So just
starting
looking
to
forward
understand. Yeah, it's a lot of
work. Looking forward to delivering more content, and always look forward to doing Ultra and getting to talk about this crazy kind of stuff with other people. So
Dude.
thank you guys.
Also, if you guys are interested in finding Tasty, he is in the APM Andreas Tossi. Sorry, I just because I read it on the internet and I was like, oh, dude, from New York, it could easily be.
Close.
But yeah, but Tossi. And if you go to APM Andreas Philosophy Memes on Facebook, you can find him right here. I think if you just type right there, it should just come up and you can find his posts right here as well. He does awesome music. I'm not kidding. You definitely want to hear the stuff he does. And there's a lot more. We're going to have to talk a lot more. I'm very interested.
I'll be at a casino. I leave tomorrow, Lawton, Oklahoma. There's a casino out there. I'll be playing all weekend. I play all over.
What casino in Oklahoma are you going to be at?
Well, I play multiple casinos in Oklahoma. I don't know which, but it's the one by the military base.
Okay.
Lawton.
There are probably people here
from
Oklahoma. So if you want to find him and you want to go to the casino and you want to hear some legit music that Andreas approves of, then this is the place to do that.
I play Padre Island every year. I live down there basically for a month and live on that island and play at the La Grande Resort and just travel around doing my thing. Nothing big, nothing original. I'm just doing covers,
Dude, but you're a real musician.
Awesome. I'm hearing big helicopters now. I got to go check out this.
Yeah.
UFO
All right, guys. We love you all. We'll see you next
everybody.
week. And
Happy Wednesday, Ultra.
Take care, everybody.
Vista, baby.